supremacy is having a renewed moment. 6 months into the Trump 2.0, Michael's going to give us a history lesson on what it looks like in 2025. That's next on the 11 a.m. hour of BPR on GBH and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corby Kummer. Dozens of Texas Democratic state lawmakers have abruptly left their state. They're trying to block a Republican-backed plan to change U.S. congressional districts in Texas. The GOP hopes to add 5 more Republicans to the U.S. House. The plan is backed by President Trump. Texas Democrats say the change in voting maps is racially based. Texas House Democratic Caucus Chair Gene Wu went to Illinois. He was joined by some fellow lawmakers when he denounced the Texas Republican plan.
We will not be complicit in the destruction of our own communities. We will not be complicit in the destruction of any communities in Texas.
Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott has told the Texas Democratic lawmakers to return immediately. He says if they do not, he'll seek to remove them from office. Hamas and Israel still appear to be far apart on a multi-staged ceasefire and hostage release deal. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports Israeli and U.S. officials may be leaning toward a military solution to free them.
Desperate videos of emaciated Israeli hostages in Gaza's tunnels swelled weekend anti-war protests in Israel. International pressure over starvation conditions in Gaza is also putting pressure on the Israeli government to come to a deal. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office released a statement Sunday saying, quote, Hamas doesn't want a deal. It wants to break us, but we will not break. I am filled with an even stronger determination to bring back our kidnapped sons and to eliminate Hamas. Israeli media are reporting that there are plans for Israeli forces to expand the Gaza offensive into sensitive areas so far avoided over concerns about the presence of Israeli hostages. Family members call Netanyahu's plans to free the hostages by military force a, quote, death sentence. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Officials from India have hinted they'll keep buying oil from Russia. That's despite President Trump's threat of a penalty. India's foreign ministry says the country's relationship with Russia is, quote, steady and time-tested. NPR's Amkar Khandekar reports.
In the weekly press briefing on Friday, spokesperson Randir Jaiswal was asked if India had stopped buying oil from Russia after Trump's warning. Jaiswal did not answer directly, but said that India's purchase decisions were mainly based on oil prices in the market and the global situation. He also downplayed differences with the US, saying that their partnership had survived several challenges. India has ramped up imports of Russian oil after Moscow offered it at a discount after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine 3.5 years ago. On Sunday, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller said that India's imports effectively financed the Russian invasion. Omkar Khandekar, NPR News, Mumbai.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up nearly 500 points. This is NPR.
Good morning from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Henry Santoro is away. 3 children from Gaza arrived at Logan Airport yesterday on their way to receive urgent medical care in the U.S. GBH's Esteban Bustillos has more.
The 3 children arrived to cheers and singing from a group of supporters who held signs and Palestinian flags. Nora Khalil is a volunteer working with Heal Palestine, the group that brought the children to the U.S. She says the group works with all the connections they have to make the evacuations possible.
We could not say that they would be evacuated until they left Gaza because changes happen at every moment. They've had a lot of evacuees not evacuate and as a result sustain more injuries or, be killed. And so we are very fortunate that they were able to make this happen.
One of the children, 14-year-old Rahaf, will stay locally to receive care. Esteban Bustillos, GBH News.
The man leading the charge to bring a WNBA franchise to Boston has spoken about the move for the first time. The Boston Globe reported over the weekend that a group led by Celtics minority owner Steve Paliuca has reached a deal to buy the Connecticut Sun and move the franchise to the Garden. The deal is for a reported $325 million, and the team would begin play in Boston in 2027, but it still needs approval from the league. Paliuca says that his group will respect and cooperate with all league rules and decisions on the move. We're looking at highs in the mid-80s today. You're listening to GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. I am Jim Browdy. Margery Egan is off for a few days. NBC 10 Boston. Sue O'Connell sitting in. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day, Mr. Browdy.
Good day.
Good day.
Good day to you, too, Sue. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. So we're going to start this Monday by staying at home, since apparently that's what everyone is doing now. We're not just bowling alone, we're bowling at home. No longer meeting up with friends, especially since the pandemic. Avoiding real-life human interaction in favor of a chill day on the sofa. According to the Americans spend an average of 99 more minutes at home every day than they did in 2003. And by the way, this started before the pandemic, so it's not just a pandemic. And while young people today, 15 to 24, I think, spend over 2 hours more time at home than young people did in 2003. Add it up, and we're voluntarily spending an extra COVID lockdown worth of time each year in the house, more than 3 weeks isolated from our neighbors, our friends, our family, from strangers. So we want to hear from you at 877-301-8970. You can call or text. Do you find yourself spending hours inside, huddled safely away from the supposed dangers of the outside world? What about your kids? Are they choosing to scroll TikTok and play Xbox instead of running wild through the streets or the neighborhood streets? Are you one of these people? Are you staying at home more than you used to? And if you are, why? We know there are benefits to staying and working from home, easier childcare, more hobbies, saving money on cooking. But what's lost when we no longer meet up with other people, like-minded or not, to our physical, mental health, and a whole bunch of other things? The number is 877-301-8970. You surprised by this?
Not at all. Not at all.
Why not?
Well, because I spend a lot of time with younger people, young adults.
Yeah.
And they don't want to go
you have
anywhere.
A young adult.
I have a young adult. I'm, old enough to be the grandparent of many of my colleagues at NBC 10 Boston, and they don't go out. They stay home.
Why do they stay home?
I don't know.
Why don't you ask them? Why don't you say, why do you stay home?
Part of it is money. It is very expensive. But when I tell a story of how when I was a young adult in the early 1980s, and I would go to 4 nightclubs a week, I would go out all the time. I would find a way. I wasn't wealthy, but I would go out. I would hang out. When I was a kid, I would hang out. And they look at me like I have landed from another planet. I think we need to set the table a little bit and say there's a difference between being alone and being lonely, right? Although I think being alone can sometimes feed the loneliness, and you can be out and be very social and be lonely. But the fact is that we are all, on every generation, staying home more. And, for me, it's about parking. It is how
that is good enough reason to stay home.
Yeah,
an extra hour and 40 minutes a
can
day.
I get there? How much time am I going to spend parking? How much is it going to cost? So I have to. Live in the city.
Who are you going to bump into that you don't like?
That I don't like. I don't like.
That is a real problem. That's a problem in a small city like this. New York City, where I used to live, you don't bump into anybody. You don't know.
But I did live in Canton for 10 years, and
What's it got to do with New York City?
I was shocked about how you keep running into the same people all the time. And now I live in Boston again.
Yeah.
And so it is better. So I think if you move to the suburbs and then into the city, it's like living in New York City.
It is very seductive when the world is stressful to stay at home. I will acknowledge that. You know what I did on Saturday, which is, I have to admit, somewhat unlike me, because I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I went and sat and had a cup of coffee outside the Flower in Boston Common for like an hour.
Right.
And it was because I was an hour early, beyond the fact that I find that always enjoyable sitting like cafe kind of thing.
Especially in
by
Paris.
Myself. Just checking. Well, not just in Paris. In
I'm
Boston
just filling in for Margery.
Thank
here.
you very much. Appreciate that. And then I did something I don't think I've done in years. I went to a movie by myself.
Oh, my God. I love to do that.
And I went to see Naked Gun. Now,
Yes.
the good news is I went to see Naked Gun. The bad news is not
didn't love it.
nearly what we were all hoping
Right.
it would be. But I was actually out in the world,
Yeah.
and it felt pretty good. And sometimes you have to force yourself because it's easier to stay in isolation.
I agree.
By the way, and I did. And now that you say, I was nervous about parking until I got downtown. By the way, I was nervous the whole way.
Oh, it's a
and then I
pain in the
found it, and everything worked out.
All right,
fine.
so before everyone starts calling and texting, as you're already doing, I also want to set the table and say, yes, there is a generational difference between how we were raised in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and the kids today. There's a great TikTok clip we're going to play from you from who is explaining to a Gen Zer how her generation had to drink water out of the hose when they were thirsty.
When y'all are saying that y'all used to drink from the hose, were sinks not an option?
Who's going to tell him? You want me to tell him? I'll tell him. We weren't allowed in the house. I don't know why that's so hard for people to understand. The television stations had to make a commercial reminding our parents that they had kids. I shit you not. Every night on the 10 p.m. news, a voice would come on and say, "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" To remind our parents that they had fucking kids.
That's pretty good. 877-301-8970. You know what about this story? Where did I say the story is from? The Washington Post?
The Washington Post, yeah.
You know what they talk about is that very few, in urban settings, very few people live in walkable neighborhoods. The more walkable neighborhoods you have, the more likely to be out, the healthier you are, the more socially engaged you are. And I hadn't thought about that, but that is sort of true. You
Yes.
know?
Yeah. If you just even just walking your dog or going out and interacting with folks is and again, like you said, you don't want to run into people you don't like. And I'm actually I like to be alone. I was alone a lot as a little kid.
So was I.
And so I had to find my own way. But when I go out, I like to interact with people, but I like to leave them there and then go back home. So
you want another thing? This is obvious. We're going to get to your calls in a second. 877-301-8970. You know what the other thing is? Digital purchases, which I hadn't. That's pretty obvious too. Is sadly we don't spend enough time in brick and mortar stores. If we do, we just are checking things out and then we go home and buy
the grocery
them
store
kind of
used to be a more social place to go, and it's not anymore. You get many get groceries delivered, or you get the delivery. So
it's not a good thing. I mean, it's just I think it's social isolation, and having an increase in 20 years by an hour and 40 minutes per person is not a good thing. Do you think people would agree on that or not?
I think so, and I also think the time, and I'm not an anti-screens person, but I think when I find myself like involved in a social media war and I'm spending 35, 40 minutes of my day doing that, I don't think, and even if it's just an obsession, if you're looking at, do-it-yourself videos over and over again, it's not the same shared experience we used to have when we would watch something all together or all get a magazine that we all read. So even when we're engaging in content, a phrase that I hate to use, we're doing it in isolation, even though millions of other people are doing it.
Do you have a third place kind of thing? Everybody knows what a third place is. A place you occasionally hang out that isn't work and that isn't home. Do you have a place like that?
No, I don't. Do you?
Well, I don't have an individual place, but I do. As I say, I like sitting outside when the weather is bearable and having a cup of coffee and just sitting and checking
My third place would be alone, just to be alone. Sitting in my car, alone.
Sitting in your car? Did you used to zoom into our show?
I did last time.
Why?
I zoomed
Why?
in.
Why
Well,
is that
just
again?
because I can control the environment. I don't have a barking dog. I don't have someone who's going to ring the bell. I don't, and so I enjoy my car.
Yeah.
And seriously, if I'm driving someone somewhere and I have to wait for them, I'm as likely just to sit in my car.
Wow.
It is a BMW, I might add.
really
so there you go.
troubling.
All right,
Let's go. You go first.
Let's talk to Margot from New Hampshire. Hey, Margot, welcome
Hello, Margot.
to BPR.
Hi, Margot.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're excellent, thank you.
Hi. So, I am a known quantity for spending lots of time at home, but I also think I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it's definitely a trend, even in a small
it is.
rural area like I live in. But I think a lot of it, and especially since COVID, is about self-care. I think people are taking more time to say, do I really want to do that? Or am I already fried? Have I done enough this week? Am I feeling, like I just need some time to regroup and re-energize? I just think people are paying more instead of mindlessly accepting every invitation or feeling this frantic need to kind of go every minute.
So what do you do when you're hanging out at home? Well, what's an activity or two?
I read a lot.
Okay.
I sew, so I do that a lot. There's a big walking community where we live here in Hancock. A lot of people walk.
Oh, I forgot. You're Margot from Hancock. Okay, now I know.
Yeah.
Hi, Margot.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So now you can picture the scene.
I do. I can. Well, Hancock's great.
Yeah.
We know who else lives there, of course. Yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly. So, and honestly, I have been working from home since the start of COVID and loved it. But I recently kind of feel like I'm ready to go back and join the world, and I'm going to be making a job shift. And but I do think people are paying more attention. I just think they're more aware that they don't have to do this frantic pace that they might have done in the past.
You said that beautifully, Margot. Thanks for the call. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Margot. The thing I love to do is not get invited someplace and then be angry I wasn't invited, even though I wasn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, that's
that's my favorite grudge.
That's a healthy attitude.
Yeah.
Actually, it really is a healthy attitude. And you can do that at home or in your car.
In my car, I
can
can sit in my car. Some people are texting and agreeing with me about the car being a third place, so it's a nice place to be.
877-301-8970. Anonymous texter says we have to stay home. Walking outside costs $40. Now, part of the problem is that everything costs a lot of money.
It is amazing.
But taking a walk, I'm not a big take a walk kind of person. Taking a walk and smelling the roses, literally or figuratively, looking into your neighbors' houses to see what they're doing. Margery does that, by the way. At night.
I do that too.
She does, yeah. Doesn't cost anything.
I take Maud and I go for about a 45-minute walk every morning, but I'm not adventurous in it. I'm kind of stay in the neighborhood, and it is amazing what you learn about your neighborhood when you walk around and no one else is there.
Now, AB from Auburn, listening on NAPM, is an honest person. I didn't want to say that. People are spectacularly annoying. I'd rather be at home with my dog and books. That is a motivator. But why are they more annoying in 2025, dramatically more annoying than they were in 2003?
Because we've learned to live without them during the stay-at-home orders and COVID. I think it just, you realized how much you're putting up with from other people on a regular
I'm fairly
basis.
Antisocial out in the world.
Yeah.
But I even I know this is not a good kind of thing. Isolation is exactly the opposite of what you should do, I think, when you're in a world that is so jam-packed with stress. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I one thing I love to do is go to the movies. We go to the movies a lot, my daughter Ruby and I. I love to go alone to movies as well. And that, to me, is a shared, you can be quiet, you can sit. I'm not annoyed by people in movie theaters in the way that some people are.
Well, speaking of that, which has nothing to do, it's something to do with our topic. I said I haven't been in a theater by myself, movie theater, for, I don't know, maybe even pre-COVID. Maybe I went once since. I didn't think I had this disease. The disease that Jared has?
Yes,
what's it called again?
I don't know, but the sound.
Whatever the hell it's
potato chips.
What's it called again, Nicole? Misophonia. Thank you, Nicole. That's the thing when you can't stand other people. I always used to ridicule. I'm going to continue to ridicule them. But it drove me nuts. I'm sitting there by myself during the coming attractions, and I was the only person who liked. I love coming.
I love coming. I do too. Jim, we should go to the movies together.
I love coming attractions, and I'm listening to everybody chew popcorn, like with their mouths open. Doesn't that drive you nuts?
Doesn't. I'm good. I'm good in movie theaters. Ruby teases me because during COVID, when we were finally allowed to go back to the movie theaters, I had seen my family. We had seen our friends. We were reconnecting. But when I got to the movie theaters and Nicole Kidman came on, I started to cry. I didn't cry seeing my family. Oh. I didn't cry, but I was so thrilled to be able to be back in the movie theaters.
Here's Annie in Saugus. I actually forced myself to the city on Friday. You know why? To see Jim and Margery at the library, and then spent the day taking the train, walking around. The BPL is amazing, which it is. Jim, I'm a huge fan. I was too nervous to say hi because you are scary. Well,
that's true.
It is what it is. What can I say, Annie?
All right, let's
Amy, but thanks for coming. And by the way, that is a wonderful way to spend a day.
It's free, and it's free. Don't
it's free. Do you need tickets?
It's free. You do not need
How
tickets.
about
It's free.
RSVPs?
No RSVPs.
Okay, Amy in Springfield, you are next on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi there. How are you?
We're good, thank you.
That's good. Yeah, this really resonated with me, this topic, and I do look forward to listening to you guys at this hour. I just really feel like the unfriendliness is there's like some sort of disintegration of a social contract of sorts now, where I feel that people are much quicker to be extremely rude. People are more unhappy and maybe having more psych problems and just displaying it across all settings. And so I do outside sales Monday through Friday, and then when the weekend comes, I'm really like tapped out on risking going somewhere and having someone be super unfriendly.
I hear you, Amy.
We're both nodding here.
Amy, do you know about the Gen Z stare? Have you heard about the Gen Z stare?
I don't know what it is. What is it?
So
I do.
Do you want to tell Jim what it is?
I guess it's kind of like instead of verbally replying to something you might have asked them or told them, they just look at you and stare at you like you're an inanimate object.
They do.
And some people are trying to say this is like this is normal now. And I'm like, or that teenagers have always done this. But I think there's even less social coaching or social modeling. So like if your parent looks at their phone when someone's talking to you, why wouldn't you look at your phone when someone's talking to you?
And
there's a lot of that.
And
another great call.
And it's hysterical. Excellent. Because it also happens in the retail setting. I mean, I was at a store I'm at all the time, and the drink was made wrong. No big deal. I gave it to them. I said, "Hey, this needed to be like this," and she just looked at me, and I just said, "Can you remake it?" And she went, and just took it. And I was like, there's the Gen Zs. And part of it is they missed high school. They missed college.
No, that's a decent
They're on the
point.
screens. They don't know how to interact. So we're just kind of taking from them like vampires. Amy, thanks for calling. Good luck out there over the weekend.
Here's Diane from Hopkinton. I'm currently hiking around a lake in Metro West Mass with my three favorite people, me, myself, and I. Lots of friends have asked to tag along on my hikes. I say, no, thank you. This is my special alone time. Well, going out in the world by yourself is not the same as staying locked in your house by yourself. That is don't you think that's a healthy
absolutely.
behavior?
Yes.
The issue is not whether you have well, I guess it is to a degree, whether you interact with other people. The issue is get out of the damn house, I guess, is the point there.
And I think also there is a lot of taxing of emotions in the world right now. It's also a bunch of topics a lot of people are afraid they're going to say something wrong. There's a lot going on that you don't want to talk about politics. So a lot of interactions are kind of fraught. So you can imagine you just want to have some time alone. Shall we go to Al on the road?
I think
Al?
we shall. Yes. Hi, Al.
How you doing, guys?
We're good.
I have two teenagers at home, and everything that they do is a planned event. Like, they've never learned how to go out and hang out with their friends by themselves.
Yep.
When I was 20, I lived in New York City. I went out 7 nights a week. I wouldn't recommend that, but that's what I did. My kids don't know how to go out and just organically meet up with some friends by accident and spend a few hours with them.
Yeah, that doesn't
We've never
happen.
given them that opportunity. Right.
Yeah, we used to just go out and you would see who you would see. You would go to a club even, or you'd go to where you hung out. Al, do your kids, this is the thing that drives me crazy too. Does it take them 17, 18, 19 texts just to make a plan that they're going to meet like around the corner at 8 p.m.?
Yes.
It's this ongoing.
On a good day. Usually it's 25 to 30.
I'm like, am I driving you somewhere? What's happening? Well, I just texted. What'd you say? I said hi. She said hi. I said, what are you doing? She said nothing. I said, what are you doing? Nothing. Do you want to hang out? I want to hang out. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? I said, this could be a phone call. I mean, this is like, why are we spending 4 hours texting back and forth?
You know, Al, you were in New York City at 20. I was in New York City at 21, living on Washington Square in the Village. You know what we used to do? Walk out of the dorm, walk into Washington Square, and sort of like figure out what's going on and then go do it. Exactly as Al said.
I lived in New York City when I was 25 for 3 months, didn't know a soul. I went out every single night, not necessarily to a club, but I forced myself out to talk to people and see people.
But Al, thanks for the call. Keep in mind, the last couple of calls talking about young people, and the next text does too. This is every age group. While it's more pronounced, the 15 to 24s, it's dramatic. 99 more minutes at home at home per human than in 2003. Here's Kate and Newton. This is a good one. My kids, 16 and 11, love being at home. When they wanted to go thrifting this weekend, we skipped the stores in Newton. I took them to Central Square. That's in Cambridge, for those who don't know. I nearly had a heart attack. I was so out of practice being around all the people, bikers, walkers, despite working in Cambridge 20 years ago. My kids who live 5 miles away said they felt like they were in another world. Definitely going back, but may take the subway. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the challenge.
It's an out-of-body
too.
experience.
Yes,
yeah.
don't get hit by the bike. Make sure you cross the street. It's all very, very exciting.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Giovanna, you have a minute. You're in a car. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a mental health clinician.
Oh, great.
Yes, I deal with this. I was listening to the other callers, and effectively something is going totally wrong. I am imploring all of the people listening, please go out. Do something outside instead of staying locked up inside the four walls of your home. There is a big thing now about social anxiety. People can't stand being around people. And it's not just the young people, it's adults. And you have agoraphobia, people who are afraid to leave their homes. They're just locked up inside. I grew up in the 80s. I'm 55 years old. I remember.
Whoops.
You remember?
We lost
Giovanni. But
take his advice. He knows what he's talking about. He's a psychologist or whatever he is, and a psychologist. He's right.
And I'd also say that if you're one of those guys that has a chair in the garage or like just to sit on the front deck, that still counts as going out
it
too.
Does.
So
I mean,
it's like,
because
I'm
you have to
serious.
interact with people who don't
People
live in your
walk
house.
by, you say hi to folks. I mean, I think
I could see you doing that, by the way. I could see in about 10 years, like having a folding chair.
That would be
like
totally
an old
me.
crummy folding chair, half broken, sitting on the porch and like yelling at people.
Yeah,
as
just
they
hey,
walk by.
right. Or, pretending I'm busy when they walk by so I don't have to say hi. All right, stay with us. We've got more of this coming after the break. Your calls and texts. I'm NBC 10 Boston Sue O'Connell sitting in for Margery. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on GBH, NEPM, and we're streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
The fast fashion industry produces millions of tons of fabric waste each year. Some brands turn that fabric waste into new clothes.
One influencer wore a top of ours and posted it, and then we got something like 20 orders in a day, and it was the most exciting thing.
That story and more global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting As You Like It, this summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common. Shakespeare's lush romantic comedy celebrating the joys and follies of human nature, July 23rd through August 10th. comshakes.org. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, presenting the 2025 season of Tanglewood, showcasing the beauty of incredible surroundings and world-class music. Tanglewood, where music goes for the summer. Tanglewood.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. I'm Jim Browdy. I'm not GBH. And NBC 10's Boston Sue O'Connell. That's who she is sitting in for Margery. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow with CNN's John King, Carol Rose from the ACLU. And on Wednesday, Auditor Diana DiZoglio will be with us at the library to give us another depressing update on a ballot question that was endorsed by more than 7 out of 10 Massachusetts voters and is still going nowhere. That's the one about auditing the legislature. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about what's been lost as we all become a nation of homebodies, spending on the average an hour and 39 minutes more in our house than we did in 2003 instead of going outside, spending time with friends. Is this increasing social isolation a bad thing? And are you doing it anyway? 877-301-8970.
All right, let's go to Maureen. Maureen, you are on the road and on the air at BPR. Welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Maureen.
Well, let me just start by saying my roommate went to the library to see you guys once, and she says it was like going out on a Friday night without alcohol.
Well, I think that's fair.
Well, she enjoyed the time.
Thrilled
so
to hear
much.
that. We love having people there. It's a fabulous venue for those people who haven't spent time there. Tell her thanks. What's up, Maureen?
I will. I was invited out to a thing once my friend was having, and I was angry with myself for accepting. I just didn't want to go. I literally swore all the way there because I made a commitment, so I'm going to go. And I got there, and I had a wonderful time. People need to push themselves to get out. I can't believe how my cortisol level just plummeted. Mm-hmm. And it was good.
Can I tell you something, Maureen? I've said this
myself to go out
before. When Margery and I have an event together, I text her and call her on the phone
He's
as
a
we're
joy
both driving
ahead of time.
And say, I dread this. I don't want to go. This is going to be a nightmare. This is true every time we ever have a thing. And I have the exact same experience you do. Every time I do it because I have no choice. I have fun.
I think we have also eliminated the things that we have to do. Like I know my daughter, I've shared with her permission, she's got a number of chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
When she was unable to play, she played sports for the social aspect of it in middle school. And when she couldn't do it anymore, she said to me, what I miss, I asked her once, do you miss playing basketball? Do you miss playing softball? Do you miss soccer? And she said, I don't miss playing, but I miss being forced to socialize. And I think that's a lesson that through every generation, we have to force ourselves,
right?
Force ourselves
like
to,
Maureen said,
to socialize because it's healthy for us and it's healthy for
Here's
others.
the problem, Maureen. Thanks for the call. On one hand, every time I dread something and I go, I enjoy it. But the flip of that is every time I don't go to something, I'm thrilled that I didn't go. So how do you balance?
Well, you
those?
just have to. It's like it's a discipline. I think you have to make yourself do stuff you don't want to do from time to time.
Judy from North Smithfield, Rhode Island says there are no more sidewalks. The ones are broken down and a safety hazard. Now it's funny you say that, considering she's in Rhode Island. Margery's contention is there are virtually no sidewalks in New Hampshire, which is a very good reason not to go out. It is true.
Yeah.
And apparently there are no sidewalks in North Smithfield either, which is a very good reason not to go.
Yeah,
you
got to
walk
safe.
in the street.
It's dangerous.
Exactly.
It's dangerous. All right, let's talk to Maria, calling from our home state of Massachusetts.
Hello, Maria.
What's up?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, yourself. Go ahead.
Well, I'm on the road, so I hope you can hear me.
We can perfectly.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with the last caller. You do have to push yourself in everything, really, because a lot of people do have anxieties and are shy and they're not as outgoing. But my feeling is the reason why this has developed into such a catastrophe is the electronics and the cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in an age where there was no cell phone, and you had to make plans from the landline, and you were anxious to go see your friends. You wanted to go out. You wanted to have fun. But now that these kids and even adults are burying their faces in cell phones, whether it's playing games or just texting people, I think it really affects being social.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, by the way, what year was the iPhone invented? Was it
almost 20 years ago, I think.
Which is almost exactly
when this started.
This started into the comparison with the huge additional time at home is from 2003. So, Maria, I think you're onto something. Thank you for your call. We
there's more
it.
to do at home, and you're still engaged. I mean, like you, Jim, I was home a lot as I was absent almost entirely first grade to sixth grade. I watched television all day long, listened to the radio.
I didn't eat television. I watched television and I ate. You don't eat television.
And I read magazines and I read books and all that, but it's different now because you can engage with others, gaming, texting, but you're not really engaging with them face to face. So it gives the illusion to yourself that you're connected in a way, but you're not really.
It's a very good point. You know, climate change may help in a perverse sort of way, because I go out much more out into the world when it's warm than when it's cold. Do you not do the same thing?
Yeah, it
I hate
really.
winter. I don't like ice. I don't like snow.
Yeah, we know about you and the ice.
Okay,
and the
fine.
things. Okay,
Everybody
yes, we
knows
know.
that. But my point is, if it's warmer, which is bad for the world, but good for my socializing,
You'll go out more.
You're more likely to go out. What do you think of that?
I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
That's a highlight there.
Sarah, you have a minute. You're Sarah calling from Sarah, apparently.
Oh.
What a coincidence that is. Hi, I'm kidding. It was a typo. Hi.
I'm calling from Groton.
Groton.
I am
Love
calling from Groton, Mass.
You have 45 seconds. Take it away.
Okay. I worked for local government for over 20 years, where my job had me at a counter where I just took daily abuse from the public.
Yes.
For 20 years, and the day I retired, I just vowed to myself I would never have to deal with the public again. So it's lovely being home. I don't ever have to see anybody or get yelled at. And if I go into CVS and they're in there having a line, I don't get upset because I've been behind the counter. And I think it's lovely being home and in my house, in my garden, and just not seeing anyone.
Well, you got a pass. I mean, in all fairness, you got a pass.
yes.
You paid your dues.
You paid your time. You did your
were more
time,
than out of the
Sarah.
house for 20 years. Can you imagine that, Bo? Can you imagine being a front-facing person?
I cannot at
in
all.
local government?
No.
I mean,
Not at all. Nope.
Everything I ever mentioned, someone in your family did. How come no one was a front-facing
Because
person in
we
local
all have the
government?
same DNA, and we could not tolerate it. That's why. All right. Thanks to everybody for your calls and texts. Go outside today. Go do something.
It's gorgeous, by the way.
After this quick break, we're going to speak with Michael Curry. Of course, take us with you. He's the president and CEO of Mass League of Community Health Centers. He's going to Zoom in with us and chat with us. I'm NBC 10 Boston Sue O'Connell in for Margery. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, A Complete Unknown. The Bob Dylan biopic is based on the book by musician and cultural historian Elijah Wald. He joins us to talk about it and his upcoming show at Passim. Plus, we head to Woonsocket, Rhode Island, home of a famous jazz and blues club nestled in a 120-year-old Chinese restaurant. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Babson College. You can learn to lead with impact and become a driving force for change. Babson's virtual graduate admissions workshop is on August 27th. Registration at babson.edu/gradworkshop. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to BPR on GVH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and NBC 10's Boston Sue O'Connell. Sue's sitting in for Margery. Joined now on Zoom from Martha's Vineyard by Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, and on the national board of the National NAACP. Michael, it's good to see you. By the way, Michael is zooming in from Martha's Vineyard, and his background is the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, you are a bi-coastal kind of guy. Let me
I
tell
didn't
you.
want to show you Oak Bluffs in the background, so I didn't want to make you jealous.
I know.
We're jealous anyway,
jealous
but
anyway.
thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Michael, good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a little bit. Last time you were on with Jim and Margery, you were talking about white supremacy and the history of it, and doing a primer and explaining for folks that may not just understand how it's a foundation of our nation. If I could jump ahead a little bit, and you've provided with us this great PowerPoint presentation that we've been going through this morning. Can you help us understand this and set the expectations of what it is that's happening? One of the things I love talking with people about, it's not a Republican thing or a Democratic thing, white supremacy. It's not just about people of color. It impacts all of us in many ways. What's your first take on explaining this to listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I think most importantly is that, and you've heard me say this before, Sue, and Jim and Margery heard me say this, that Americans don't know American history and we don't know world history. And of course, what we've learned is that over time, people have distorted history, whitewashed history, ignored history. What we know as white supremacy exists is this whole notion. It's why we're at a place where there's too few Black doctors and lawyers. Why there's no proportional wealth in Black families. Why we're not in the C-suites. It's because of white supremacists. Because this nation was built as much as anything else on the fabric, and its fabric, the white supremacist ideology that some people don't belong. Some people are less qualified. They're less ethical. They don't belong in the same spaces. And if you know American history, and all of you and the three of us have had these conversations before, then you understand how we got here. So I walk people back in the presentation that Jim and Margery heard me do in Quantum Leap, back to European colonialism, the 15th to the 20th centuries, when European countries were looking to expand their trade and colonize other lands. I walked them through what that looked like as they invaded, intervene in other communities and other lands and other nations, and control the people for economic, political, and social gain. And as they use religion early on as the tool to determine who to subjugate, eventually in those European countries that turned into race, as they decided that Africa was a great place to pillage, to kill, to enslave people, and then to transport them throughout the world, and particularly through the Americas. And people know from their history classes, the little cursory understanding what manifest destiny was, that we called it by the time the 19th century came along in the US. This whole notion that some people are given a God-given right to go out and conquer and exploit other people and other countries. That is as world history and American history as it comes. And what we saw was it justified slavery. By the 17th century, the social construct of race was being created, and Europeans were using it to justify the subjugation, murder, rape, and exploitations of millions of Africans. Millions. And I think we sometimes skirt over the fact that we're talking about millions of people who for generations were owned by other human beings. And we know, and I say this often when I do presentation, I don't trust not damn one of you in the audience to own another human being. I don't care how Christian you are, how good-hearted you are, how nice of a person you are. I don't trust you to own another human being, but imagine owning them for generations, their kids, their kids' kids, their great-grandkids. All of that is what we're talking about to then understand why there's disparities, inequities in society today. And people want to assume it's because I don't want to have a college education, because I don't want to live healthy and not have diabetes or heart disease, that all those things we're experiencing as Black and brown folks were because of our own negligence or lack of care, when in fact these things have a history.
Staying in history for a minute, and then we can start transitioning to the present. Where are you on when some of the better of our founders who've done some wonderful things, we learn had slaves? The general response, almost as before you finish the sentence, is, well, almost everybody had slaves back then, so they have to be forgiven. How forgiven, if at all, should any of them be?
I mean, one is that's ridiculous on its face. There were people in Europe when they were transporting slaves across the Atlantic Ocean, the Middle Passage. There were people in this country who understood that this was evil, that it was counter to every religious teaching of all those people who went to church on Sundays and proclaimed to be people of faith. They ignored their own teachings, their own faith, their own Bibles, their own tenets of their faith in order to benefit and gain from the ownership of other human beings. This was evil then and now, right? We know that slavery was evil, and that what they're trying to do in society, those politicians, those arrogant, evil people today, is justify the evil of yesterday. It was very documented that there were people resisting this and saying that these are other human beings, and we should not enslave other human beings. So I quantum leap that up to folks in this country when you're talking 1700s, 1800s, when the world was starting to identify enslavement as a bad thing and starting to remove it, the United States, because of the profit it was making, was still enslaving people. So as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the founding of this nation, I need everyone who listens to your show to remember when this nation was founded in 1776 and we said, give me liberty or give me death, resistance to British rule, there were still millions of slaves in this country that would go beyond 1776 to 1865 as enslaved people in this country. That is a major contradiction. So although I'll celebrate 4th of July, for me, it's also 1863 or 1865 or 1964 with the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, or 65 with the Voting Rights Act. I have other markers that truly, to me, are liberating moments for America.
Speaking of the 1800s, can we stay in the 1800s for a minute? And I don't know, particularly young people, how, in 2025, the Democrats on a good day are on the right side of history, and on an average day with a president who has dinner with white supremacists and neo-Nazis and that sort of thing, and the Republican Party is his. That's the construct that people expect. But in the late 1800s, it was totally the reverse. The Republicans were the abolitionists, and the Democrats were those who were embracing the South's racism. Could you talk about how we transitioned out of that, Michael Curry?
Yeah, part of this whole transition between the party of Lincoln, right? Because Republicans often like to lift up the party of Lincoln. The party of Lincoln was the party of abolishing slavery. And of course, I had a professor in college who passed away, phenomenal professor, who used to argue that the Civil War was not about slavery, it was about states' rights. And of course, that was misleading. And those Democrats who championed the ending of slavery led it to a civil war. Parties shift. And I think what you saw over the period of time through Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction was this, and I often point out today, the moment we're in to those days, where now there's a campaign for whiteness. This whole notion that, hey, we gave too much liberty and responsibility to these people that you can't trust, and they're shiftless, that they can't take this power that you've given them in Congress. As 2,000 or so African Americans took seats in the state and the congressional legislature and in state legislatures across this country. And then the propaganda that was starting to be put out during Reconstruction was that they were shiftless and eating chicken in the chamber with their feet up on the desk, and that they were shiftless and not smart enough to pay attention to policy. And when you can put out that kind of propaganda, I love the phrase, he who controls the narrative controls the people, then and now, you then start having this shift of people who start to believe that Black folks don't belong, that society, that culture is under attack, that we have to make America great again, and that these people are compromising that greatness. So it is no surprise that parties shifted, and there was a strategy that was then put in place to draw more resistance to that progress by the Democrats from Democratic Party. And now the Democratic Party has now become that entity that more often will fight for those things like civil rights and social justice, where the Republican Party has totally lost its way and forgotten its roots and its history.
We're talking to Michael Curry.
Michael, I'm as you know, 63, and for my entire career, I have mostly worked in male spaces. I've been the only woman in male spaces. I've been lucky enough to work in many diverse places, but I have also worked with a number of individuals who I would say are mediocre at best. I have worked with, not you, Jim, I've worked with a number of people who I learned the phrase, the success of the C student, someone who was able to just get through college decently enough and get a job and then didn't really excel at it. And the majority of them were white men. Who I totally love, great people, but I'm just saying, whenever I hear someone, and you cover this in your presentation here, talking about a DEI hire, or saying that person only got their job because they're Black or because they're a woman, and they, the challenge of and burden of having to be exceptional just because you're black, just because you want a middle management job that mediocre people have been holding for decades. But you have to be exceptional because you're black to get the job. And then everyone is going to judge everything that you do based on the fact that you got the job just because you are black. And here we are in 2025, still with this burden of, and I would say weaponize the DEI idea that, there aren't billions of mediocre people out there working and having decent careers. But if you are of a certain color or a gender or orientation, you have a higher burden to be excellent. You just can't be mediocre at your job, right?
Yeah, I think we call that a black tax, right? This whole notion that we have to be better than in order just to be in the same room. As Jim and you and I have talked about being at the Quinn, and one of the people that I was so impressed by, I never thought I was a fan of hers until I saw her walking into the Quinn, and I became it was like I saw Michael Jordan. It was Doris Curran Goodwin. And I got really groupie-ish. For those who know, she's a presidential historian.
We all do. Yeah.
And I wanted to say to her, about this conversation, that we've had some pretty idiotic presidents over the course of this nation's history. And I can think of one in particular. And this whole notion that you can have mediocre, underperforming white men and everyone ignores them because they got a job because of who they know. And this is every profession, right? Any credible person that's listening to this show, or any audience that I ever speak to, knows that they know large numbers of white men who are incompetent or unqualified at their job. They don't check all the boxes, but they have relationships. As Maurice Wright used to say, they're qualifiable. Maurice Wright used to work for Deval Patrick. He said they don't check all the boxes, but we can give them an opportunity because they have some skills that are transferable. Throughout this nation's history, white men have benefited from being perceived to be qualifiable or just given a pass. And we know, you see them everywhere, right? It's no slight on white men. It's just the fact that society has benefited them to the detriment. And this whole notion of white supremacy is the belief that white people, particularly white men, are superior to all other races and genders, and thus should dominate them. It's rooted in the now discredited doctrine of scientific racism that was a key justification for European colonialism. So I say this to your question, Sue, to say this. We know that's true, right? Any credible person, look at the appointments under this most recent administration. That's your case in point. They don't check all the boxes. They don't have the stars. If you're generals, they don't have the credentials, the succession of jobs that warrant you being in key leadership positions. But what do they do have? What is it that they do have? They have that white male skin. Now, I always say to people, if you had a room full of white males and two black men or women, and then people in the room are thinking, well, I wonder if they're here because of affirmative action. I wonder if they're here because of some, preference that got them in the room. How often do you look around the rest of the room and say, how did the rest of y'all get here? Because I know several of you're my boss, you're my subordinate, you report to me, and I know you're horrible at your job or you're not competent, and we give you a pass. But what is it about me as the white man or white woman that makes me more irritated about those two black people around that board table? That's white supremacy. It's the whole notion that those people don't belong here. And the black taxes, we should be able to be unqualified too. Mm-hmm. We should be able to be mediocre too.
It's true. We'll have equality when you can be mediocre.
Exactly. That if society allows people in these roles, then everyone should have that opportunity. I'm not a proponent of every black person who enters a role has to be two 4-star generals, have to have 3 master's degrees. That is not even factual for white men. So therefore, you create this unfair dilemma for everyone else. I say give people an opportunity and give them an opportunity equally.
Michael, I just want to read you one post from somebody watching on YouTube. Rain, I love listening to this man. More MAGAs need to listen to this intelligent and clear information regarding our history and how we got here. Truth. Michael, it's common, and I'm guessing the question is generally asked by white interviewers at the end of a presentation like this, but things are better than they were before, is the sort of the mandatory. But then when I was reading one of your outlines, I was reminded, and I assume most people listening know about the Southern strategy used brilliantly by people like Richard Nixon, where instead of speaking openly in favor of segregation and white supremacy, used what you call coded language, law and order, silent majority, and that sort of stuff. We don't need to use coded language anymore. We just say it outright. and it seems to be perfectly acceptable. Those who support the man who uses it apparently not only are not turned off by it, but turned on by it. So are we in a better place when it comes to what you're talking about, or no?
You know, I always used to say, and I say this sometimes in presentations, that if I'm as a lawyer, if you had to get me to prosecute the case on racism and the case on how far we've not come, I would win that case every time. I talk about lawyers white lawyers comprising 78% of the legal profession, significantly overrepresented in the U.S. I talk about the majority leadership positions within law firms. I talk about our medical profession, and there's still predominantly white men in our medical schools and graduates of medical schools, and are overrepresented in the highest levels of the medical profession. I talk about the fact that Black folks don't have wealth, people of color are over incarcerated, 60-something% of our prison systems, and much less of the population. I'd walk you through all the data, and I'd ask you to check your own compass. Because again, does it mean that they're smarter, work harder, more focused and disciplined, can be love education more than we do, believe in the nuclear family more than we do, better with money, they're more ethical, they're more values driven? And if you come up with the answer that they are, and the answer is yes, then you have bought into white supremacy. The whole notion of white supremacy is that people are better, and you're not looking at the social determinants of success, of violence, of achievement, of academic achievement. You got to understand from whence we come to understand where we are. And that is the unfortunate part, Jim, to your question is, I can prosecute the case that the disparities, the inequities in society are just as stark and as disturbing today as they were in the past. Maybe not percentage-wise as bad, but still causing lives to be lost and people to be incarcerated and families to be impacted. That is what we're talking about. Comparing it to the fact that we have a few more, 2-3% more black physicians than we had in 1960 is ridiculous.
Well, Michael, before we will let you go, we know you're, even though you have a San Francisco background, that you are on the vineyard, and it's August, and we know why it's so important to be on the vineyard in August for any number of folks, especially Black folks and African-American folks. But tell us, share with us what some of the important things that are happening for businesses, for communities on the vineyard right now.
And we have a minute.
Well, I'll tell you, every time I jump on Jim and Margery, I feel like, where's Waldo? I'm somewhere like tropical Margaritaville. Well, I'm here.
He wasn't Margaritaville once, but go ahead.
I'm here for a conference that Boston Medical Center is hosting with some phenomenal leaders from across the country in the health equity space. So I'm here for 2 days for that, and then maybe a day or two to enjoy. There is a wealth of Black intelligence and wealth on this island during August, and they come here to mix and mingle, to do business, to celebrate, to relax, to vacation. And some great things come out of this time. And companies are now investing in and focusing on this Black talent pool and resource-rich environment that's here on the island for the month of August. That's something to celebrate. And I'm just excited to be here and have some of that rub off on me because there's some brilliant business leaders here this month.
I think there should be some rubbing in the other direction too, my friend. Michael, it's good to see you, and thanks for taking time out to talk to us today. That was really terrific. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Anytime. Great to see you.
Michael Curry is the CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers and on the board of the National NAACP. We say goodbye to you listening on NEPM, but tune in to the fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Our show continues here in Boston. Coming up after the noon news, Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, and food policy analyst Corby Kummer joins us. I'm NBC 10 Boston's Sue O'Connell. I'm in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy, and you are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Braude and Margery Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Boston Children's Museum, featuring 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Visitors can sort honey and acorns with Pooh Bear and Piglet, bounce with Roo and Tigger, or read one of Owl's favorite books. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org. Survivors of the atomic bombings in Japan share their stories and advocate for peace and change in a set of raw and rare interviews. Watch Atomic People tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Braude, head on Hour 2 of BPR. Is sports betting shaping up to be America's next addiction crisis? Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung joins us for that, and the latest on Josh Kraft's finances, and his latest on Donald Trump, plus what Trump's firing of the person who delivered bad economic news on Friday really means.
I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. Then it's Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett on why the White House has no plan to mandate IVF coverage despite Trump's push for a baby boom. All that, plus our Two More Things segment next on BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is backing a group of Texas Democrats who fled their state over the weekend to block a vote on new GOP-drawn congressional maps. Republicans say the plan would add House seats. Democrats call it gerrymandering. Meeting with lawmakers in New York today, Hochul praised what she called their bravery in standing up for Texans at risk of losing representation.
This is not breaking the law. This is a legitimate process that has been used before. By breaking quorum and being here today, these legislators are getting into what John Lewis might call good trouble.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott says if Democrats don't return for this afternoon's vote, he'll pursue legal action to have them removed from the state house. Investors are so far having a rocky August after a weaker than expected jobs report Friday sent stocks plunging. But as NPR's Maria Aspen reports, Wall Street is hoping for some reassurance from big companies this week.
August is a historically weak month on Wall Street. A weak jobs report raised new alarms about the impact President Trump's sweeping tariffs are having on the U.S. economy. Unemployment is ticking up, while employers are creating fewer jobs than expected. Investors had largely been shrugging off the tariffs noise after the president paused and softened some of his initial taxes. But now, Trump has announced more of them on imports from dozens of countries. Now investors will be listening closely as more big companies weigh in on the economy, hiring, and the tariffs fallout. Disney, McDonald's, and Marriott are just some of the companies reporting quarterly results this week. Maria Aspen, NPR News.
Ukraine has carried out drone strikes against Russian warplanes and a railroad station in two separate attacks. NPR's Greg Myrie reports this is part of an ongoing campaign to hit Russian targets well beyond the front lines.
The Ukrainians say they destroyed one Russian fighter jet and damaged four more in the overnight attack on an airbase in Crimea. Ukraine has been striking with increasing frequency in Crimea, the peninsula Russia captured in its initial invasion in 2014. Russia didn't comment on developments in Crimea, but officials did acknowledge a separate Ukrainian drone strike that damaged a railroad station in the southern Russian region of Volgograd. The Russians used the rail network to transport military supplies to territory they control in eastern Ukraine. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Kyiv.
Stocks are trading sharply higher on Wall Street at this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 480 points. The Nasdaq Composite also trading higher, up 354. The S&P up 79 points. This is NPR News in Washington.
From the GBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Henry Santoro is away. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is pushing to secure a community benefits deal when it comes to the Kraft Group's proposed soccer stadium in Everett and on a sliver of Boston land. At a press conference in Charlestown today, Wu pointed to a bridge and a traffic rotary in the area as examples of the neighborhood's infrastructure needs. She says since February, the city of Boston and the Kraft Group have met 6 times to establish a fare mitigation agreement, and each time the city has asked the Kraft Group for basic information about the stadium's impact to the community there.
But we've received limited to no answers. To this day, the Kraft Group has provided the city no meaningful technical information. What we've heard has stayed at a conceptual level that is insufficient for any serious negotiation.
Wu says the Kraft Group's proposed $750,000 in mitigation payments is, quote, unserious. She also noted her mayoral opponent, Josh Kraft, is a counterparty to the city on the matter. The Kraft Group did not immediately respond to requests for comments. And if you've been feeling a little more anxiety when it's time to take a trip to the grocery store, you're not alone. A new poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research says the vast majority of U.S. adults are at least somewhat stressed about the cost of groceries. About half of all Americans say the cost of groceries is a major source of stress in their life right now. Boston Public Radio continues next. You're listening to GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of BPR. Jim Browdy and NBC 10 Boston. Sue O'Connell sitting in for Margery. We're streaming. I'm supposed to say good day to you.
Good day.
Good day. Thank
Good
you
day.
very much. Where'd that come from, by the way?
I think it's Willy Wonka, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yes.
good. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're live at the library tomorrow with the Civil Liberties Union's Carol Rose, CNN's John King, and the 2 co-owners behind the Sports Bra. You know, that was the whole idea. It's soon open
I
in
support
Boston.
the sports bra.
That's all women's sports thing. Oh, the Sports Bra. Is that?
Support.
I got it.
Got it,
Okay,
yeah.
fine. Now I get it, yeah. Okay, we're joined on Zoom by Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. She also hosts the podcast Say More with Shirley Leung. New episodes every Thursday. Hey, Shirley.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Shirley. You totally get me. I appreciate
I
you
do.
laughing.
I got you. It took like
I know.
5 seconds.
It's
I got
okay.
you.
It's
Okay,
fine. So, Shirley, let's talk about Josh Kraft and his campaign to become the next mayor of Boston. I guess we were experiencing a sort of soft launch of the campaign because he relaunched, of course, in August, which is always a helpful thing to do because people are paying such close attention to
And
what's
on a
happening
Sunday.
on a Sunday, right? Why not? Because that's going to do it. But he has not released his tax returns. He has told us that in 2024 he made $6.3 million, and how much he paid in taxes, which was, let's see,
About $2 million.
about $2 million in taxes. But we don't know where the money comes from. There's a whole bunch of questions we have. What's your take on this? Is this a bad spot for him to be in? Is there something he can do to talk about his taxes in a way that the voters care? Do voters care? I guess these are all the questions I have.
I mean, of course, this is bad for Josh Kraft. I mean, especially when Mayor Wu has been hounding him to release his tax returns. And I believe he said, I'm going to release them.
Yeah, he said it to the Globe, by the way, where
Yeah.
you work.
And he said they
did.
were complicated,
Yeah.
too, which I imagine they are, but people understand things.
Right. And I mean, what he released was financial documents prepared by Ernst & Young, which is a well-known accounting firm and apparently must do the taxes for the Kraft family. And now Mayor Wu also did not, post her tax returns online, but she has made them available for reporters to look at them. And I mean, I think what's really curious is why it's almost like a half step, right? I'm going to tell you I made $6 million, but I'm not going to tell you how I made $6 million, especially when we know that he worked for the family foundation and he is, his dad is the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft. And he has told that it was our impression that he didn't receive any salary. He didn't draw a salary from the foundation. So why not say where $6 million comes from? So I assume it's investments, the $6 million.
Well, the point is we shouldn't have to assume, I mean, that's the big issue here. And I was talking to some folks that were on the wealthy side of the world over the past week about this, and many were giving me reasons as to why one wouldn't want to release their tax returns and why one wouldn't want to talk about who owns the North End condo that he lives in, why an LLC might own it or an S Corp or trust. And I was like, look, and I'm all for whatever you want to do, but if you're running for an office, you have to explain why there might be conflicts of interest from where your income comes from. And I know this sounds crazy when we have Donald Trump as president, who's got, all sorts of income and challenges around where that money comes from. But I don't understand why this is so difficult.
What are you talking about? One, two things. He said he was going to release his returns. He didn't. That's the first sin. I don't understand why it's so difficult, because obviously there's a source of income that he doesn't want the public to know about.
But didn't he think about that before he ran for office? That's my point.
Do you think it's unfair to conclude that he
would move things around?
Right. Like, I remember, if you're going to run for city council, I remember I had this conversation with a city councilor once who was running, and some other candidate had some small thing, and he said, you get your dog license. You make sure your parking tickets are paid. You do all these things to make sure if you're representing the city, there aren't questions, so that we don't sit here and talk about this for 10 minutes wondering what's in it. You just get it cleaned up.
And the thing is that Josh Crowley, he didn't also just decide overnight he's going to run for mayor. He's been thinking about it for at least a year, maybe 2 years now. And so he had time to kind of get his financial affairs in order. And so it just raised a lot more questions than answers. And maybe that's why he dubbed the speech on Sunday as a reboot again, it's a distraction, right? I mean, you think about it, President Trump also did not release his tax returns, right?
After having said he would, because it was under audit, which no one knows was true, and he didn't. And by the way, yesterday at his relaunch, or whatever you guys are calling it, his primary focus, you say a distraction away from the tax thing, was to say that he is not on the side of Donald Trump. He said he stoked hatred and division, trying to separate himself from some of the accusations from Mayor Wu. I should just say, the naivete around this $6.3 million thing, every single interview he does until Election Day, any reporter is going to say to him, where'd the $6.3 million come from? He's going to have to answer the question at some point, or the more he doesn't, he's going to I want to say one good thing about the campaign, though, even though they got it asked backwards. The commercials that are on now from Kraft, which are talking about him and what he cares about and what his life is like. That's how a campaign's supposed to start. I mean, when I would turn on the TV and say a newcomer to politics has these black and white images of Mayor Wu, this, devious, evil kind of, it was ridiculous. I mean, that's not how people.
That was from the Super PAC.
I understand that, but as Joan Vanocchi said, there's a lot of overlap between the two.
And he could have gotten out ahead of it. He could have gotten out ahead of it by putting that ad out first.
And he could have said, I'd ask them to take them off the air, even though I have no power to, because that's not the kind of campaign I run. That's one. So the next thing, even though most people probably don't even think about it, Tom Glenn, who you're on Massport, who for those listening, probably nobody knows who he is, but he's been in high places in government and has gotten really a lot of plaudits through the years. He has been agreed to by both sides to be the mediator in this whole thing about what kind of compensation should the Kraft Group be paying for building this soccer stadium in Everett, and because of the spillover effect it may have in Boston. This also gets back to what you guys were talking about, preparing. Josh Kraft kept saying he would recuse himself if he were mayor from that decision were it not resolved before he was sworn in. We asked him when he was on about this this recusal issue, and here's the exchange.
You recuse yourself.
I recuse myself.
What does that mean? Who makes the decision for the city?
Chief financial officer, chief legal people.
They're constitutionally empowered?
That I could not answer, Jim, but I don't. That I could not answer.
I mean, how can you not answer? If you're saying you're going to recuse yourself, how do you not know what a recusal would mean? It's sort of, I don't know. And by the way, let me just say again, we have both of them on separately. The last week in August, Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday of the final week of August, Mayor Wu will join us, and Wednesday, Josh Kraft will join us. But one of the things, speaking of the other side of the equation, the incumbent, you wrote a piece about development and growth in the neighborhoods as compared to downtown, Shirley. And well, first of all, describe what your piece was about, and two, does that accrue to the detriment of the incumbent? That juxtaposition,
right? So this was a piece about, Mayor Wu is running for re-election, and, how is she done in economic development? And if you remember when she ran in 2021, she was running on this idea that I want to spread wealth to all the neighborhoods. I just don't want it to be in the Back Bay, Seaport. I want my focus to be all neighborhoods. And so I try to look at that strategy. And she, stayed true to her word. I mean, and to a lot of criticism, if you think about previous mayors, whether it's Menino or Walsh, they really focused on building up the commercial centers of Boston, whether it's Back Bay or Downtown Crossing, the Seaport. I mean, really in the form of development and office towers, because that's where your property tax base is. That's where the city, which depends, I think, like 2/3 of its budget, city budget depends on property tax revenue. So that's why they focused on it. More bang for your buck there. But that wasn't her approach. Her approach was, I want to make sure the neighborhoods are flourishing. And you see that in the foot traffic and the spending data. The neighborhoods, whether the far-flung neighborhoods like East Boston, JP, Roxbury, they have fully recovered spending-wise from pre-pandemic levels, whereas the downtown is still lagging. And so to me, I try to it all depends whether you, depending on whether this was a good or bad idea, depends on where you sit, right? For the residents and neighborhoods and the small businesses and neighborhoods, they love this, right? They felt that her administration has done a lot to help them thrive, the small businesses there. But if you're a downtown developer, they're upset, and also some of the small businesses in downtown, they're upset because foot traffic is still down a lot. And some of them were hanging on, 5 years after the pandemic.
But if you're not in either of those camps, there's an issue that you touch upon, the tax base, because so much of the land value is property value is downtown.
Right. And that is something, if she gets another second term, I mean, that is what she'll have to deal with, how do you jumpstart development? Because that's where your property taxes are going to come from. And she started to, I feel like in the beginning, she didn't focus as much on downtown. And maybe she didn't think it was as big of a problem. But I think now, towards the end of her first term, you can't say she doesn't care about downtown. I think she's doing a lot in terms of events to bring foot traffic downtown. A lot of this is driven by the hybrid workplace. I mean, basically, office workers are not coming to downtown.
Right. There's not a lot of residential area in downtown. Right. I mean, I'm old enough to remember how downtown was after Filene's and Jordan Marsh stopped being the big draw down there, and how desolate it was. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I worked at KISS 108, we hosted, this is in the 80s, an aerobics contest just to drive people to get to. So when I hear the downtown is struggling, it's like, it's still struggling. The pandemic didn't help. Development is a sort of separate issue from the foot traffic issue. And it's like, is there a magic solution here to bring downtown to what it was in the 60s?
Right. But downtown, I mean, right, maybe it wasn't the 60s, but think about what Menino did with the theater district. Right. Putting all that money in the theater district. Millennium Tower went up there. Some of the most valuable condos are there. So Downtown Crossing had a renaissance in the
years.
20 years, the Menino years and into the Walsh years when the economy was good. And so now it's set back a bit, and she's trying to, fast track some of these
conversion things. How's that going? I think that's a fabulous idea. How is that going?
It's There's about 800, almost 800 units in the pipeline. Several buildings have been, are under construction or conversions are under construction. I think you're going to start to see some of the new units, opening this year. But still, 800 units is not a lot. It's not going to be. It's going to make a difference, but it's not going to solve this issue of a lot of office workers staying home.
And anyway, they're not going to. Nobody can afford the units because they're losing so much money on sports betting. So it doesn't really. So you had a really interesting interview about. First of all, as I think listeners know, this explosion of gambling is a nightmare. And as I say, every time we talk about any kind of gambling in this state, we spend more on the lottery by a factor of like a zillion per capita. Of any state in the United States. The closest, I think, is D.C., and it's not even a close second. What was your conversation like? What's his name, Cohen, the guy?
Yeah, Jonathan Cohen. Yeah. He's the author of a new book called Losing Big, America's Reckless Bet on Sports Gambling. And he talks about kind of why it is that sports betting really took off in the U.S. And, it starts with the 2018 Supreme Court decision to lift the ban on sports betting. But he lays out this case that there were just the DraftKings and FanDuel. I mean, they got organized very early, right? They laid the groundwork. First started. You probably don't remember, but they started as fantasy, right?
Sure.
Before the sports betting was legalized, they started as a fantasy sports betting sites, and they kind of built the infrastructure, and then they knew how to go state by state because even though the Supreme Court, struck down sports betting, each state had to decide on its own. So they were very good at going to state, working the politics, getting each state house to pass this. And so, he concludes his book, and he talks about the rise of gambling as a result of, the rise of sports betting. I mean, he thinks that sports betting will make gambling a public health crisis. I mean, if you think about before, it's just casinos, and there's only brick and mortars. I mean, you had to
the lottery too.
The lottery here, but think about casinos. I mean, you have to go there. You have to get dressed. You have to drive there. You have to think about it. Whereas sports betting, you just turn on your phone, right?
And you think about the addictive nature of our phones anyway, right? Trying to, whenever I'm on vacation, I try not to be on social media, and I just find myself picking the phone up. And if you have a gambling addiction or issue and being able to just reach it immediately, it's scary.
I mean, what's interesting about Cohen is that he's kind of this new kind of category class of people, or I don't know, of advocates. He's not anti-gambling. He thinks that gambling is here to stay, but how do we set up the right policies and guardrails? And he ends his book, and the podcast ends this way too, is, how big will sports betting get? And his take is that it's the FanDuel and DraftKings. It's not, sports betting isn't the be all and end all. It's online casinos, online gaming, and that's what they're preparing for. Because sports betting only appeals to a relatively small group of people. But if you can get everyone to play slots on their phone or poker, it's a much bigger audience.
You don't need a basis of knowledge to participate.
Right. And so, or love of sports. And so that is the next wave. And that's why he's really concerned about gambling becoming a public health
crisis. That's what
crisis.
State House is involved in right now, right? Next year, we're going to have online lottery. And soon thereafter, they hope we'll be able to lose even more money at home through casino gambling kind of thing. So, by the way, before we leave this, didn't he have at least one? I mean, he had a bunch of solutions. One of which was it when you lose all your money before you? What were one of the things he proposed to you? Before you restock, there's got to be a waiting period before you.
I mean, his whole book is about how, when you think about sports betting, there's a lot of data. The companies know a lot about you. They already know who is online and overspending, or who they already know who the problem gamblers are.
Yeah,
So
every young man in America, that's who they are.
Or as they
That's
call
right.
them, our favorite customers. Problem gamblers, favorite customers.
But they were saying that there's a way to shut them down. There's a way to do timeouts, and part of that is the legislature, part of his lawmakers. They need to step in because obviously they're not going to police themselves, right? And so that's why, the Jonathan Cohens, there's a whole group of people out there saying we need much stronger guardrails compared to brick and mortars casinos. And I'm hoping that's you're starting to see some of that discussion as well, locally and nationally. What are the new sets of guardrails? Because technology is addictive. I mean, you don't need to place a bet on a game or poker. I mean, it for us, it's like we're scrolling and we're checking, all our phones constantly.
Briefly, if I can, I just wanted your advice on something before we talk about your liquor license piece. The ratings in this show have been really good for a while, but I was talking to Margery before she went on vacation, and I said, if we ever get a bad ratings book, we should just fire the person that delivers the ratings. Do you think that's a good strategy that maybe could be? I have to say, I say this every week, of all the incredible Trumpian things, this one really takes the cake. But since I say it every week, I guess none of them takes. So he gets job numbers that he doesn't like. They're obviously rigged because he doesn't agree with them.
Bad.
And he fires the head of...
It makes him look bad.
Yeah.
Right. And he, because it's true. And he fires the woman who is head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the fear that a lot of people have in the world in which economics governs is if we can't rely on data to be accurate, we can't make public policy that's based on fact. Are people in your world as worried about this as they should be?
Yeah, this is really troubling because Trump is once again trying to control the narrative, and he's trying to attack data. I mean, usually data is something that can't be manipulated.
Like election results, sort of, right?
Right. And so, and the thing is that, for those of us who follow these job numbers, there are constant revisions, right?
Yeah.
Now, these revisions were a little larger than usual, but they're constantly revised. So that is always revised, right? And the thing is, frankly, for someone who's been following the economy, I mean, I'm surprised how resilient our economy has been based on the numbers, because of all the, tariff talk, all the.
But Shirley, the other part of this is that he's going to be telling Americans one thing about the numbers. Right. I mean, I just came back from Maine, where stores are not on vacation in a resort vacation area, where stores are not open 7 days a week. They're only open 3 or 4, where the farmers who are at the farmers market look like zombies because they have no one to work in the fields, as one of them said to me.
Joe Biden's fault.
So we are going to have this, the president says the numbers are great, and then meanwhile we look around us and are we going to believe our eyes, or are we going to believe what the president says? I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. And the thing is that it's such a dangerous time because you have to kind of really understand, because if you only heard, there are massive revisions, that's why you fired her. And if you didn't understand it, you're thinking like, there's something to it, But anyways, most people didn't even know who the labor commissioner is, And so the fact that he's going after her, and this is something that, authoritarian regimes do a lot, whether it's in Russia or China, we don't trust the data coming out of government. And sadly, that might start to be the case here.
Before you go away, we only have a minute left. I had no idea that this liquor license change was happening that I read about in your piece that was posted a couple of hours ago. Can you just spend a brief period of time? I'll urge people to go to the Globe website and read it. What's the new thing here? It's pretty great, it seems to me.
Yeah, no, it is good. It's so last year I wrote a lot about new liquor licenses in Boston, and this was kind of slipped into the latest budget, and probably because I am thinking the House leadership did not want to get any trouble because it seemed pretty something that's pretty basic, and but it gives an opportunity for anybody, any restaurant in the state, any business in the state that currently holds a beer and wine license. They can they have the opportunity to upgrade to an all alcohol license. It would be what they call restricted, meaning that if you have beer and wine, you can't sell it. You have to, once you're done with it, you have to turn it back to the government. And I know the prices in Boston pretty well. I mean, just to give you a sense, if you went and bought a beer and wine license, it's like an unrestricted one where you can use anywhere in the city. That will be easily $100,000, maybe 150 or more, 100,000 more. Now you could turn that in for a restricted all alcohol. And most of the time people buy beer and wine licenses because they can't afford unrestricted all alcohol licenses, which are $500,000, $600,000. So now I don't imagine a stampede, like, all these people, clamoring. But I think for people who really want to do this, they can. I mean, it's a case by case decision, but it's just another way to kind of lower the barrier, level the playing field for restaurateurs, because it really shouldn't be this expensive to
having
serve
a government license that becomes a business asset is crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, so it's a solution there.
Read Shirley's piece. I think it was good news coming from Beacon Hill, and we don't hear enough good news as we should. Hey, Shirley, thanks for the time. Really good to see you.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
Shirley. Bye-bye. Shirley is the Boston Globe business columnist, and she hosts the podcast Say More with Shirley Leung every Thursday. Coming up after this quick break, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett. I'm NBC 10 Boston Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When Hurricane Katrina hit 20 years ago, it broke a criminal justice system in New Orleans that was already dysfunctional before the storm.
The entire court system had collapsed. The files and all the evidence were under 4 feet of water.
But Katrina also cleared the way for change. I'm Ari Shapiro. A broken system and the people who worked to fix it. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Cornerstone at Canton, an assisted living community with services designed to help seniors age in place, offering respite and trial stay options to help during recovery or when exploring new living arrangements. More at cornerstonecanton.com. And Newport Mansions, presenting a weekend of coaching August 15th through 17th. Authentic 19th century coaches drawn by matched and highly trained teams come to Newport for 3 days of events and demonstrations. NewportMansions.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and not Margery Egan. Margery's off for a couple of days. Sitting in today is NBC 10 Boston Sue O'Connell. Good day, Sue.
Good day.
Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. We're joined now on, no, not on Zoom. I think you're here.
I'm here in person, 3D.
Let's do that again. We're joined now in 3D by Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at BU Medical School, and Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Good to see you, Doctor.
Wonderful to see you.
Before we start, I haven't seen you in a few weeks, and I want to take 30 seconds to say how sorry I am that your incredible father died several weeks ago. I texted you, and we text back and forth. Yeah. I have to, for those who don't know, David Gergen, who is a legendary character, both in public and if you were lucky enough to meet and work with him, which I was a little bit, was one of the finest people I've ever encountered, and not just because he served 4 presidents of both parties, because he was so smart and so decent and so welcoming and so understanding with people who didn't have all of the experience and stuff that he had. And I have to say, when people ask me what are my favorite television show episodes that I did on Greater Boston, one of my top 10s was when father and daughter, when you and David appeared together, and the pride that I saw in both of your faces. You about your father about you was just utterly beautiful, and we were all lucky to have known him. And by the way, if you haven't read the beautiful piece that Katherine wrote about her father in his later days in the Globe, you should go take a look. I hope everybody's as okay as they can be under the circumstances.
Yeah, I deeply appreciate it. And it'll be 4 weeks this Thursday since my father died, our father died. And I just want to thank people, just the kindness and generosity and the outpouring and the stories. Obviously, we haven't had the opportunity to respond to almost anybody, but please know that we are very much receiving in gratitude, and it's a lot of heartbreak and a lot of deep gratitude for the life he lived and for our relationship with him, which will carry on.
You know, one of the last things I'll say about this is in an era when everybody hates everybody. I mean, you know those we've discussed. You really do, particularly in politics. Read not just locally, the New York Times and all these national publications, and CNN did endless because obviously spent a lot endless beautiful tributes to your father. And I have to say, I know I speak for Margery too, that we were so lucky when he joined us, and he was a real mensch.
And so I agree, 100%. Thank you.
Our thoughts are with you and your family, and we miss him a lot already.
Thank you. Me too.
All right, let's go to the happy news of the Trump administration. With the heart.
She was not crazy about that. You know what David did, by the way? One last thing I should say about David. Margery may have been the first person in the country to call him unhinged early on in 2015 and 2016.
Not my father. No, Trump.
Your father. Sorry, not your father.
Be clear.
Your father wrote
a pronoun
piece.
here.
You may I assume you know this. On CNN.com in 2015. Saying that candidate Trump suffered from narcissistic something disorder.
Personality disorder,
He nailed him exactly who he was and is.
I think I shared this with you. My mother's a therapist, so she totally fed that to him. I'm giving my mom complete kudos for nailing that.
Congratulations. Yes. I'm sorry, Sue.
Well, I was just, we think a narcissist would be able to deliver on all of his campaign promises. And one of the campaign promises that Donald Trump made was that he was going to mandate IVF care. And it was a moment I remember during the campaign where some people who I was surprised were like, I don't like him, but I agree with him on this. And it was during, some of the abortion discussion and how he was concerned. Trump was expressing he was concerned about the states overreaching and stopping this. But it hasn't happened yet, and it looks like a lot of people are lobbying him not to have it happen. Do you know what's going on with this within the medical community?
Well, I mean, so again, I often bring up federal versus state. So we live in a state where there is a lot of support for women receiving IVF. The promise that Trump made, a campaign promise, obviously came up in the context of a lot of women and families and, advocacy groups being incredibly concerned about women no longer having access or adequate access to abortion care. And also talking about the Make America Great Again and how do we get our population up. We also know that IVF is incredibly expensive. So anywhere from $12,000 to $25,000 per cycle of IVF. And we know that there have been quite a number of other things that have been happening in the last 6 months, especially thinking about Medicaid cuts and other ways in which women's care has been reduced in access to medical care. So I think that the campaign promise is being maybe walked back. I obviously am not in the room where those conversations are happening. We do know that Congress would need to pass this, and we don't see any sort of legislation being moved towards Congress for this. The concern that I have is that the counter narrative which is being put up is that women really need to be focused on whole health, and that's the solution. So there is no fertility specialist, and frankly, very few or any physician who is not going to make that a cornerstone of fertility. We know that lifestyle management is absolutely something that we're going to do no matter what. So
the people who are seeking fertility treatments are absolutely already focused on whole person health. And so really ensuring that that's not the answer, and that we continue to expand access for fertility treatments as needed.
Well, speaking of promises, there's another promise that I think everybody would cheer on were it to become a reality. Donald Trump is talking about lowering pharmaceutical drug prices by 1,500%, which is really... That's a
phenomenal.
Lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a big number.
They're going to have to pay us, I guess is what it is.
To take the medicine.
But I'm forgetting the math. His position is we're going to pay, to quote him yesterday on the tarmac in Allentown, Pennsylvania, I think it was, we're going to pay as little as the lowest rate for. He sent a letter to 17 pharmaceutical companies saying this. But once again, my understanding, unless you know something different from my, well, he's got a lot of power as a bully pulpit, and obviously someone, look at the tariffs in terms of putting entities in tough positions. He issued an executive order in May that has absolutely no legal consequence whatsoever. So despite him saying what I think we would all agree, particularly you, would be a wonderful and important thing, is there any reason to think this one's going to get any closer to reality than the IVF thing?
I think that's a great question. Let me come back to one of your first points, which is to think about lowering our prescription drug prices is absolutely like a North Star, right? For healthcare costs in this country, thinking about equity in this country. There is many, there's lots of literature out there saying we support 75% of pharmaceutical costs, the U.S. itself, even though we're 5% of the population of the world. And Trump's call to action, I'm thrilled that he is and his team are addressing this. It is long in coming. I agree that there is not, it is a bully pulpit at this point, but if the fact that he sent the letter to 17 kind of CEOs and that there is pressure and that we know that this is now coming from the legislative branch. And then, going back to what you said also, Jim, to be focused on what we call the MFN or the most favored nation price. In other words, bringing the price of our prescriptions down 66% so it can match other countries absolutely should be a goal. So though it cannot be done in, just the presidential power, if this is brought to legislation, that would be a huge win for the American public.
Yeah, but every president in the last X number of years has said they want to do it, and Congress hasn't done it. And I assume it's because Congress is owned by the pharmaceutical companies.
That is absolutely correct. But there are things that are being pushed through Congress that we never imagined would also be pushed through Congress in the past. So the question is can there be enough momentum? I'm not being Pollyannish about it. I'm just very happy to see that there's a stake in the ground, and I'm not going to hold my breath for it to happen. I just am glad the American public is being made aware that this is on the agenda.
And just one last thing. The argument from the pharmaceutical companies is this would destroy our ability to finance all the new innovations that we do in terms of our research. What do you say to that?
Well, I think if we think about all the funding that's happening, the funding cuts that are happening for places like NIH, we have an amazing outlet for thinking about innovation and breakthrough. And it's not just about, what's happening in the bottom line in terms of prescription drug companies. It's also thinking about, we have a lot of middle management that's happening right now in pharmaceuticals. Yeah. And how do you actually take out middle management and save a lot of money so that it can go back into innovation and research?
Well, there's also the other argument to that is that if that were to be true, say the pharmaceutical companies, then why not spread that cost equitably amongst every country that purchases your drugs,
right.
rather than primarily having
That's
control
exactly
in the United
right.
States. Okay.
All right. Well, something else we can all agree on is that we want our children to be healthy and active and
yes,
do all sorts of fun stuff. And I imagine that many people in this building, myself included, did not love the presidential fitness test that we went through starting in 1966 from Lyndon Johnson.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. And it was, I remember with great optimism, I would approach it and did not do well.
You couldn't do a pull-up? Is that what
I
it was?
could not do a lot of things. I really thought I should be able to, but I just couldn't.
Welcome to my world, my
and
friend.
That's why we're all in this business now. And President Trump wants to bring it back, and folks are sharing their horror stories. Even some athletes who are saying, professional athletes who are saying, I couldn't do any of it. What are our thoughts about this, Doctor?
So I did something that my father would often do, which is to informally poll people outside of the room. Okay, so prior to coming on, I was informally polling people outside of the studio, and everybody, I would say half of the people I talked to absolutely despise the presidential fitness test, and some people really loved it because they're super competitive and did well. So, look, LBJ started it. He thought in 1966, he thought the U.S. kids were getting soft. It was the middle of the Cold War, and really kind of put a stake in the ground again, saying, let's get kids fit. So, Trump brought it forward and said he's going to reinstate it. We know that fitness is a core for children's health. The question is how do we actually instill love of fitness for our children versus being kind of petrified and terrified and do something out of the context of nowhere. So
like climb a rope.
Like presidential fitness tests, often you don't get any training, you don't get any preparation. You show up in a cold gym, you're asked to do pull-ups and run a mile. So I am all for bringing more gym time to schools, more fitness education to schools, thinking about ways that we can actually challenge our kids, but to pull it out with any context, I think, again, is going to create potentially a group of people set up for failure. I absolutely hated the presidential fitness test.
I think Trump should do it first. I think that would be if it's going to be a presidential fitness test, the president should have to do it.
By the way, I hate to embarrass you on air, Doctor, but Jamie has just written us a note. The poll she conducted was very unscientific.
It was an N of
just
two.
Hannah and Jamie.
Yes. Yeah.
Hannah, Ms. Bike to Work, rain or shine, loved the presidential fitness test, says she was super competitive. Jamie, who'd rather never leave the sofa, did not like the test and called in sick as often as he could.
I did not say it was a scientific study. I did not quote the power of the study. I only said that outside of this room, I was not alone in disliking the presidential fitness test.
What would be an appropriate, and we all know, it was a Get Moving or whatever it is that Michelle Obama talked about. Yeah. What is the appropriate role, if any, of the federal government in terms of, we're one of the fattest nations on earth, I think people know. The obesity rate, particularly among kids, which is the most frightening thing, is just stratospheric. So what should be prescribed?
Well, first of all, let's talk about, we've talked about this a little bit in terms of MAHA, but let's talk about school lunches, right? And let's talk about what kids get fed. That would be a huge move if we actually talked about bringing nutritious food into schools, paying for it, making sure that kids and families have access to SNAP, which would then cover healthy foods. And then in terms of thinking about fitness, how do we actually make sure that there's federal funding for every school to have time, every day for kids to be outside? How do they have the proper equipment? How do they have the proper land? How do we have schools make sure that they have teams where there are not cuts? I'm not saying make them non-competitive, but we have such a hyper-competitive set of kids now that you can't play a sport after age 10 if you're not good at it.
Speaking of food, one thing I wanted you to explain to us that we've talked to you about in the past, but I'm not sure I understand how it works. Yeah. We're going to talk to Corby Kummer at 1 o'clock, our food guy, who almost every time he's on, we talk about another nightmare, these SNAP cuts, the food stamp cuts that are coming. We've talked to you about a very creative thing that I think I've heard about first from you, is certain physicians or healthcare professionals prescribing food. Yeah. And, I nod my head and say, that's great. What does that mean and how does that work? You write a prescription for somebody who is food deprived. And, what happens?
So every person who comes in, we do something called a social determinants of health screening. So that looks for things like housing, education, and food, and thinking about how much food access do you have? Are you food insecure? For patients who have food insecurity, who can't afford healthy foods, then we at Boston Medical Center, I can actually write them a prescription for our food pantry. In that prescription, I say, in-house.
Okay.
In that prescription, I can say, this patient has diabetes, they have high blood pressure, they have a kid at home who has gluten sensitivity. Give them a box that fits their needs. But the whole food as medicine thing is actually really important. And I actually talk to my patients about it every single time, saying, look, you're on a blood pressure pill, but just as important is food. Your food is your medicine, right? And how do you make sure that you're eating lower salt foods also?
How widespread is that the practice outside of BMC? How widespread is this?
I think it's taking on more and more momentum across the country. I think, again, it's thinking about how do we ensure that insurance, CMS actually has just come out with some good legislation around Medicare potentially supporting more whole person health reimbursements, in which case food would be reimbursed more than it is currently.
So why don't, in light of the fact that even people like me understand, who have no skills in your area, know that healthy nutrition is the key, one of the keys to being healthy, why don't insurance companies include food prescriptions as part of their fix?
I think that absolutely should be. I mean, that's one of the things that we're fighting for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking to Katherine Gergen Barnett.
So Mass General Brigham, the state's largest healthcare system, is saying it's going to join forces with CVS to expand primary care in Massachusetts. We have talked forever about the shortage of primary care physicians.
Yes.
What do you think about this idea?
I think there's two sides to it. So, first of all, I'm, obviously completely in support of thinking about how do we try and fix our primary care crisis. We've talked about it a million times. We know that Massachusetts, in fact, or Boston, there was just a study to show that we are the worst city in terms of new primary care access. We wait the longest compared to 14 other metropolitan cities. We know more people are retiring, and most people don't have access to primary care. The question is can CVS be the answer to our primary care? So the pitch by MGB that's in front of the Health Policy Commission currently is looking at 37 different CVS or Minute Clinic sites and hiring 80 advanced practice providers. So that's MPs, PAs, to each carry...
Nurse practitioners, physicians assistants.
Thank you,
Okay,
to each carry a panel of 1,500 patients. So as somebody who has worked on the front lines of primary care for 20 years, I will tell you carrying a panel of patients is incredibly complex and difficult, and I don't do it alone. So I need a whole team of people. I need case managers, I need behavioral health people, I need pharmacists, and not just the kind that give, a prescription.
But isn't that the point of having MGB as a backup?
Yes.
You can refer?
So the question is how much integrity will there be between these Minute Clinics and MGB? And it's not just a referral system I'm talking about, Jim. I'm talking about a cohesive, integrated system. And what's more is there is, the difficulty of hiring and recruiting. So it's not just physicians that are in shortfall right now in primary care. It's also APPs. So to recruit 80 people and then say you're going to be responsible for all of the quality metrics that this person needs, I think it's laudable. I am so supportive of trying to make this work. I just have a lot of questions about how it will work financially and logistically.
And so let's assume that obviously it's not going to be the same as going into a doctor's office, but if it were inferior but safe, I don't mean inferior in the grand scheme of things, but inferior to what it's like to walk into a doctor's office.
Yeah.
But you were convinced it was safe. Clearly, that's better than having no access
Absolutely.
to care.
Yeah. If you are, though, just say you're a 24-year-old and you have very few health needs and you're getting your care from a Minute Clinic, great. And, otherwise wouldn't get access.
That's a good
but
point.
then
That's
think about the 80-year-old with multiple chronic disease. They're not going to get it. And then guess who's going to have the burden of responsibility for all the sick, complicated patients? It's going to be the primary care physicians working in brick and mortar and not in places like Minute Clinics.
One last thing before you go. We rarely celebrate anything the legislature does. We just talked about the liquor license. They also did the thing making it far easier for international doctors who are trained in other jurisdictions to get admitted here. Is that actually happened? Not admitted, but can practice more quickly than is that happening?
It's in the works.
Okay.
It's one part of a multiple complex potential solution. But fundamentally, we need our legislation to be fixing the actual root of the problem, which is primary care needs better investment, and we need more people to go into primary care.
Good to see you.
As always, take care.
Katherine Gergen Barnett, we appreciate it.
She's the Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovator Fellow. Just add it all on
Whoever
there.
she is.
Whoever she is. Thanks for coming by. All right. We've got just enough time left for two more things segment. I'm Sue O'Connell in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Most people heading to Martha's Vineyard go through Woods Hole. Dozens of ferries, thousands of vehicles every day. It's an impressive scene, but for locals, it stinks.
There are times when I can't even breathe in my backyard. That whole area is blanketed in the diesel exhaust.
I'm Chris Burrell. That story later today on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Gloucester Stage, presenting No Child. During a 6-week acting workshop with uninterested 10th graders, Ms. Sun learns as much as her students in this powerful solo performance. Opens August 7th. GloucesterStage.com. And the Animation Block Party, dedicated to exhibiting independent, professional, and student animated works for over 20 years. Presenting Animation for Kids Festival August 9th at the Simmons Theater at the New England Aquarium. Learn more at animationblock.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston sitting in for Margery, is streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time for our quick two more things segment where you know what we do. You're first. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you read the Irish sports pages, as my family used to call them, the obituaries, which are a little harder to find these days, or you see them on the Facebook, where, that's basically where everybody goes to die. What you might find are some similarities in the obituaries in the way that they are written. And as the Washington Post, I believe, is reporting, AI, artificial intelligence, is being used by many people, including myself, to write obituaries.
In your paper?
At South End News, one of the challenges you have is when someone sends in a personal obituary of a friend or family member, or you get the one from the funeral home that they write. And neither are actually good for publishing. They don't serve the purposes of what you want to do. If you want to do an elaborate or extended obituary, they're also very hard to write in many ways. And I have found by using Claude AI, if I put them both in and ask to write an obituary for me, it will do it in 2 minutes. I obviously fact check it, make sure it's right, and I have a well-written obituary. Some people are concerned about this because they think it takes away from the personal feeling of it, but you can tell it you want it to be funny, you want it to be quaint, you want it to emphasize the person's things. So I'm all for AI doing some of these things as long as the information comes from humans.
Do you disclose how you do it?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yeah, we have some AI written stuff that we're running. It's like an editor, basically, except you don't have to pay them and they do it in 2 minutes.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. What's your issue, Jim?
My issue is Karen Leavitt, who is the press secretary of the president. Donald Trump sang her praises the other day. He was on an interview show on Newsmax Finnerty. Here's what he had to say about Leavitt.
She's become a star. It's that face, it's that brain, it's those lips, the way they move like she's a machine gun.
It's those lips. He says about, what is she, 27?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not out of character. Beyond the sexual assault, and obviously half the voters went beyond the sexual assault. Here's a quiz for you. Okay, you ready? He's on Howard Stern.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what he says. This is Trump. She's actually always been very voluptuous. She's tall. She's almost 6 feet tall. She's an amazing beauty. Howard Stern says to Donald Trump, is it okay if I call this unnamed person a piece of ass? And Donald Trump says, yes. Who is he talking about?
His daughter, Ivana.
That is Ivanka.
Ivanka,
That
sorry.
is true.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not done yet. He's on the lifestyles of the rich and famous when he was married to Marla Maples. And they're talking about their 1-year-old daughter, Tiffany. He said she has Marla's legs, and then he puts his hands under his breasts, and he says, I'm not sure if she'll have these yet either.
Shoots an infant.
This is the same guy, by the way, who walked into the Miss Teen USA dressing room while some of the young women were naked, and I assume he thought they were beautiful too. The point of this is who Donald Trump is. And half of America seems to be totally fine with it. I am not. And I would ask those of you who are, would you like it if he was talking about or walking in on your kid, your daughter? And I would assume every single one of them would say no. So why are they okay with it here, Sue O'Connell?
I don't know why. You wouldn't leave your daughter alone with him in a room, so there you go.
By the way, that's a very good question. If you vote for him for president, would you leave him alone in a room with your daughter? And the answer would be an unequivocal no. What's coming up?
All right. After the 1 o'clock news, Tufts food policy analyst Corby Kummer joins us. I'm Sue O'Connell, sitting in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH. And we, of course, are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH Radio is where you come to find serious news and analysis of local, national, and international stories. It's not just nice to have, it's a have to have. Support this trusted home for fact-based journalism at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting As You Like It. This summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common. Shakespeare's lush romantic comedy celebrating the joys and follies of human nature. July 23rd through August 10th. Comshakes.org. And Blythewald, with big, beautiful bamboo birds. 6 sculptures in the gardens, 15 to 30 feet tall, by artist duo The Mythmakers. Blythewald.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head of Hour 3 of BPR. Tufts food policy analyst Corby Kummer is back to explain why RFK Jr. might actually move the needle on ultra-processed food additives, plus how you, the taxpayer, are subsidizing the largest private employer in America, Walmart.
I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. With the rise of the cool cabanas, Shabubi shades, and SUV-sized wagons, we're going to open up the lines to talk beach etiquette. Are you annoyed that these massive tents are taking over the sand? And what about other perennial beach annoyances? Your space savers, too loud music, or too close for comfort neighboring towels? And Jim, we're going to hear your stance on the banana hammock at the beach. You can weigh in next on the third hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. Fallout is mounting after President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Friday following a weaker-than-expected jobs report. NPR's Scott Horsley says economists from across the political spectrum are criticizing the decision.
They've denounced the president's move as something out of an authoritarian playbook. It's the kind of thing you might see in China, and it's why China's official economic data is not considered very trustworthy. U.S. government data, on the other hand, has long been considered the gold standard. Now, to be sure, numbers do get revised from month to month. The latest revisions show job growth in May and June was much weaker than initially reported.
That's NPR's Scott Horsley reporting. With just days to go before President Trump's 50% tariffs on Brazilian goods take effect, both countries are dialing down the tension. Trump says he's open to a call from Brazil's president, who in turn says he's ready to ease up on nationalist rhetoric. NPR's Carrie Kahn reports.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says he wants dialogue with Trump, who set the deadline for the tariffs this week. Lula told party loyalists, quote, "I can't say everything I think I should say. I have to say what is possible," signaling he's ready to tone down his tough messages against what he says is Trump's meddling. Trump says he imposed the tariffs because of what he calls political persecution of former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, charged with election interference and plotting a coup. Bolsonaro supporters rallied over the weekend, waving American and Brazilian flags, and urged passage of an amnesty for the former leader and hundreds charged with attempts to overthrow the 2022 elections. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Rio de Janeiro.
Hamas and Israel still appear to be far apart on a multi-staged ceasefire and hostage release deal. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports Israeli and U.S. officials may be leaning towards a military solution to free them.
Desperate videos of emaciated Israeli hostages in Gaza's tunnels swelled weekend anti-war protests in Israel. International pressure over starvation conditions in Gaza is also putting pressure on the Israeli government to come to a deal. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office released a statement Sunday saying, quote, "Hamas doesn't want a deal. It wants to break us, but we will not break. I am filled with an even stronger determination to bring back our kidnapped sons and to eliminate Hamas." Israeli media are reporting that there are plans for Israeli forces to expand the Gaza offensive into sensitive areas so far avoided over concerns about the presence of Israeli hostages. Family members call Netanyahu's plans to free the hostages by military force a, quote, death sentence. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 540 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH studios in Boston. I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Henry Santoro is away. It's not news that we're all feeling stressed these days, but a new poll shows most Americans are feeling stressed when it comes to groceries. The poll is from the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research. About half of all Americans say the cost of groceries is a major source of stress in their life right now, while 33% say it's a minor source of stress. Only 14% say it is not stressful. The poll also found that about 4 in 10 Americans under the age of 45 say they've used what are known as buy now, pay later services when spending on entertainment and restaurants, and also when paying for essentials like groceries or medical care. And talk about stress, the ongoing Republic sanitation workers strike still has no end in sight after the union voted to continue the strike yesterday. The vote comes after 5 weeks of failed negotiations as the workers have tried to bargain for better pay, benefits, and labor protections. Both union representatives and Republic services have accused the other side of not negotiating in good faith. In sports, the Red Sox host the Kansas City Royals tonight. First pitch is at 7:10, and Tom Brady, the GOAT, is getting a statue from the Patriots this week. We're looking at clouds with lows in the 70s in the forecast. Right now, it's hot and hazy and 86 with no Henry right now in Boston. You're listening to GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Welcome to Hour 3 of BPR. I'm Jim Browdy. Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston is sitting in for Margery. Hi, Sue.
Hello.
Hello. Streaming YouTube.com/GBH News. Live at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. Wednesday, by the way, the auditor Diana DiZoglio is going to be joining us at the library to continue the endless conversation with her and the Attorney General about why the question 1, which was supported by more than 70% of the voters, is still not implemented. That's
and
the
there
one
may be singing.
That would allow the auditor, she can really sing. That question 1 was the one that allowed the auditor to audit the legislature, and obviously that hasn't happened. We're joined now on Zoom by food policy analyst, multiple James Beard winner, Corby Kummer. Corby's the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, senior editor at The Atlantic, senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hello, Corby Kummer. You're on mute, Corby.
Keep
You're
talking.
still on mute.
Still on mute.
I'm reading his lips. I think he said hello. How are you?
Hello.
There we go.
There he is. Hi
We
there,
have
Corby.
bingo.
How you doing? I know this technology is really advanced. Good to see you.
So, Corby, one of the things I think we can all agree on is that our food is important to us, and it's great when the government cares about what we're eating and how we're eating, and if it's going to be good for us. And RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has really made it his mission to, I think, and it's something a lot of people agree with, and I'm not being sarcastic or snarky here, that the big food industry could be serving us better and could be doing a better job. And of course, everyone is now saying to put it, to play in a pun here, he's got to put his money where his mouth is now, where there are a number of deadlines coming up. To see if the MAHA, the pure idea that we agree with, all of us, is actually going to be something that he can implement. And at the end of the president's first term here, we actually have a better food system, a better food delivery system, healthier food, or if RFK is just not going to be able to be successful for a number of issues. Is that a good sort of assessment of where he is and what he has to do?
What an excellent summary. Yes, it is definitely a kind of a do or die moment, but I think there are going to be many over the next months. The reason August is important is because after a MAHA report about food in April or May that had a number of citations that were the whole thing was clearly written by AI, and AI also invented a number of citations and a number of studies.
Yeah, fact-checking is important when you use AI. Just want to let folks know.
So it was ridiculed, but it also had a lot of things that most nutrition people agree with in terms of more whole foods, less sugar. They don't talk about less sodium, which is something that I and the people I really respect care about enormously because that helps prevent strokes and heart disease, and the U.S. has never regulated sodium, and the MAHA movement is not talking about it. Nonetheless, they've been talking about wanting to get fresher food to people and reduce crime. That's terrific. What will they do about it in terms of policy and regulation? In August, they promised a report that will talk about what steps they plan to take. Will that be actual regulation of the additives they don't like and that Europe bans, which they've said they want but have done nothing about so far? Will that actually be preventing more colorings and colorant additives than the two the Biden administration had already moved to ban and the current administration has implemented or increased their call that this is going to happen? They've been done very little in terms of actual regulation. What they have done, and when I say they, I don't mean the MAHA movement, I mean the Department of Agriculture, is cut more than $1 billion in money for farms to provide fresh food to schools and to SNAP recipients. That's been a disaster for hundreds and hundreds of farms. What they've actually done is, in the new big beautiful bill, 20% SNAP cuts, the largest ever in history, putting a lot of burden onto states that can't possibly afford it. Pennsylvania has said, if those don't get rolled back, those cuts, we're not going to be able to foot the bill for what they're asking us to foot, and we may have to end SNAP altogether. There are very dramatic and dire consequences of food aid also to local supermarkets and local food systems. So what they've done so far, the administration, has been kind of disastrous to public health and the future of public health. Nonetheless, the rhetoric from Maha has a lot of good things we'd like to see them try to put teeth into.
You know, when you mentioned the SNAP benefit cuts, which we've discussed with you virtually every single week, and the depth of those cuts shifting cost obligations on the administrative side to the states, implementing or expanding these work requirements, which on their face sound fine, but a huge percentage of people are already working. And when you increase the administrative burden for a recipient of anything, I don't care who you are, particularly if you're low income and buried with responsibilities, the likelihood of being able to comply is small. Margery doesn't miss a day in saying something really important, that the Republicans in the House and Senate were smart enough to make sure that the bulk of the Medicaid cuts don't go into effect until after the midterm elections. So it's theoretical for an average person. Is the situation the same on the SNAP front? Are most of those cuts going to happen after November 2026 when people vote?
Absolutely. A lot of them are not until 2028, in fact. So it's going to be the successor of the current administration to really worry about it. You also said something really important that I wanted to stop at.
I did?
Which you often do, Jim, but I'm too polite to stop you. This time it's, on the face of it, they look fine. And it's true. For most people who've never been on SNAP and never tried to apply for SNAP, saying, okay, there are work requirements not from 54 or 55, but until the age of 64. Okay, we're not going to exempt so many people. The people, though, when you look at it, they're veterans, they're disabled people. They're not exempt from these work requirements, which are often completely beyond their capacity. But the bureaucracy of trying to apply for these benefits, even when you do work, is killing. And by increasing the paperwork and bureaucracy, they're discouraging millions, literally, of people from even bothering to try to apply by saying that immigrants, in many circumstances, are no longer allowed to get SNAP benefits. They're effectively, even if on the face of it, the new restrictions don't sound so terrible. In fact, they even seem to have some kind of common sense component. In effect, they just knock millions of people off the rolls because it's already killingly difficult to apply for these benefits.
Can we stay on SNAP for a second and pursue an angle or two that we haven't pursued with you? Actually, this angle I'm about to mention, we talked about a couple of years ago in another context. There's a piece in The Guardian called, the title of which is Low-Wage Workers Reeling Over Trump's Looming SNAP Cuts as Food Prices Rise. And they mention that the largest private sector employer in the United States, which happens to be Walmart, has a disproportionately high percentage of employed people who work at Walmart, who get food stamps. Now, you know, people will have whatever reaction they have to it, but let's put it another way, differently than it was put in The Guardian. The American taxpayers are subsidizing a major, wildly profitable American company so that they can depress their wages. Walmart can pay less, have their workers, a significant percentage, not be able to afford adequate nutrition for their family, knowing the taxpayer is going to come in, which I know they're going to come in less, obviously, prospectively, but there's something really wrong with this picture, even in good times, Corby Kummer, no?
Yes, I see what you mean.
Whoa. You don't agree with that? You don't agree?
No, I want to think of the larger context, which is that there's now possibly 27,000 local supermarkets that stand to have to close because of the reduced SNAP. So it's not just enormous employers like Walmart that benefit from these. It's tiny supermarkets in food deserts that also can keep in business and can also keep their workers alive. What's the
big deal? I'll tell you what the difference is, though. That small grocery store that may be at risk because their low and moderate income customers aren't going to have the same amount of money to spend on food, they did nothing wrong. I would argue Walmart did something calculated and very wrong, decided we can pay you less than we should, so that we, the executives, the Walton family, can make more, because we know that the taxpayers of America are going to supplement your wages with your SNAP benefits so that you can eat at least a little bit better than you would be able to if we were paying you a decent wage. No?
You're making a specific criticism of one large company that pays wages you think should be forced to be higher, and I don't know the mechanism for that, because I'm thinking of Kroger and every other supermarket chain that derives the same benefits and relies for an enormous percentage of their business on SNAP and SNAP benefits.
It's all unacceptable to me. If you're a private sector employer, you pay somebody a wage which allows them, without government support, to be able to feed their family, clothe their family, and that sort of thing.
Good. That's your larger point.
I think it is.
Good.
Oh, we're good now?
We're great.
One last thing. I'm sorry. I was just trying to, because I was focused on the SNAP thing this morning, and we'll move on in a second. The other thing I think we don't spend enough time on is when we talk about SNAP benefits being cut, we talk about, obviously, families not having a healthy amount of food to eat, but the impact of being undernourished for particularly kids is incredible. And it's not just kids. I read a story this morning, I think it was NBC News, about how not having enough healthy food leads to cognitive decline. And again, not just in kids. Kids do worse in schools. The trickle-out effect of food insufficiency is stunning. It basically infects everything you do in your life, right?
Absolutely. And I think it was NBC News, the story that we both saw about cognitive decline, and it had a number of pretty staggering statistics, like in families with members over age 60, the prevalence of food insecurity has almost doubled in the past 3 years. These people have significantly steeper cognitive decline with less access to fruits and vegetables. 7 in 10 of the 42 million people who participate in SNAP are older adults, people with disabilities, and families with children. That's why this 20% cut hits the hardest to the people most in need and least able to help themselves.
Corby, I want to talk about when we do have our food, and we do have our food in front of us. We've been talking a lot today about food as medicine and food as the basis. We had Dr. Gergen on and Barnett, and talking about how much of what we eat can actually help us to stay healthy and help in some ways even better or enhance the way our medicines work. And we're now looking at data, not necessarily new, but now getting some more attention about the order in which we eat things, which could actually help us along. And that's around the nutrients, it's around the carbohydrates, it's around what it tells our body to do. We keep seeing, these studies over the years. If you get a small bowl versus a big bowl, right? The same amount of food in it. If you eat the small bowl, you actually feel more satisfied than the big bowl where you just keep eating and eating. There's all these studies that are been done on ways that our brain is still in the cave while we're in a supermarket with packaged foods, right? So we haven't really caught up. What is it about the nutrient order that is good for our bodies, at least by what the study says?
It's so simple and plain. It's water and fiber that if you fill up space in your stomach, and there's the actual weight of this food, meaning eat vegetables first, they have a lot of fiber, they start actually filling you up. So have that first, then have protein, then have carbohydrates and starches, because the idea is if you start with the bulky, fiber-heavy foods, which are really good, and they have lots of water in them, fresh fruits and vegetables have lots of water in them, and that adds more weight, so it just fills your belly better. And so if you begin with that, and then have protein, and leave the starch that can raise your blood sugar the worst and the steepest at the end of the meal, then you just eat fewer calories and you're fuller. So that may be one of the reasons that people on in the best study that's been done so far of ultra-processed food versus fresh foods, that may be why people on ultra-processed foods ate 500 more calories a day and gained 2 pounds a week. one theory is there wasn't enough water and fiber in what they were eating, even though the study design people gave them these liquid fiber supplements. So they didn't feel full and they ate more. So this is very common sense. But there's lots of nutrition people who are turning it into a formula and making that, and selling books and selling their products to say, you have to do it in a certain order and you have to wait this long. It's absolute common sense.
Well, yeah, the other thing that's common sense, I know I'm probably about 30 years behind here, but when I was reading these stories about nutrient sequencing that you and Sue were talking about, I read that it takes the average body there's a lag time of 15 to 20 minutes between when you are full and you feel full. Here's the point that I'm sure I'm 30 years behind on, that the slow food movement is hugely important, not only in terms of you actually enjoying what you're eating as opposed to just swallowing it like I occasionally do, I'm embarrassed to say, but also if you eat slowly, the likelihood that you realize you're full and stop eating so you don't become a balloon like I have been in much of my life is increased exponentially. That's correct?
Two things to say about it. Over the past 10 years, you've done remarkably well in learning how to pronounce the word satiety.
No, I have not, because if you had spelled it right then and said pronounce it, I would have gotten it wrong. So thank you, but you're wrong. Thank you.
Satiation, satiety.
Satiety. Okay.
The slow food movement. I wrote the first book in English about it.
You did?
Yeah. I teach at Slow Food University, called University of Gastronomic Sciences in Italy, twice a year. Yeah. I love them. I'm just donating 15 book boxes of food books to them. I've sort of outfitted their library. They're great. But it doesn't particularly mean eat food slowly, although eating food with people and conversing with people naturally slows you down.
A great point.
And when we're talking about food insecurity, when we're talking about cognitive decline, one of the main reasons for cognitive decline is social isolation. Yeah. And so actually engaging with people physically slows you down in what you're eating. You eat less because you're concentrating on the conversation at the same time, or some of us manage to eat a lot, as I did last night at a dinner party I was lucky to be invited to. I had a ton of food, but still I ate it more slowly and it lasted longer. So eating food with people is terrifically important. Part of the slow food movement, what it really wants you to do is slow down and think about, where did this food come from? Did you pay a living wage to it, to the people who sold it to you? Jim, you would completely approve of that. And did it help or hurt the environment? What do you know about the way it was raised?
Wow. It's a lot to think about while you're eating dinner.
And then you chew more slowly, and that's very good as well. All right.
We're talking to Corby Kummer.
Corby, we love the lists. We love the awards. We love all the things. The Boston Globe recently put some of the best places to get ice cream in Massachusetts. I know these things actually drive issues. We lived in Canton, my daughter and I, for 10 years. We were adjacent to the Crescent Ridge Dairy Farm, which is in Sharon.
Did that make it on the list?
It did in this list. Oh. It has in the past. It's been number one in the world, I think.
It is?
We didn't go there until she saw it on the list. And now, even though we live in Boston, we still travel about once a month to Sharon to get the best ice cream in the world because it was on the list, and it is very excellent. There's no doubt about it. How important are these lists and these awards for driving business to, ice cream stands, clam shacks, high-end restaurants, all of it? How important is it?
I think they're still important. And the reason I say still is because so much of the influence of so-called mainstream or legacy media has waned in favor of TikTok and Instagram influencers, who I think drive sales much more potently than lists. But lists, and especially, Best of Boston Magazine, which is now owned by the Globe, or, favorite ice cream says Globe. If the Globe's advertising department reaches out and then says, don't you want to buy some ads? Look how nice we were to you. And we're going to give you an emblem you can put on your door. I think it still has credibility. I think it matters. But what I had to smile at is you're saying, my daughter and I loved it when she was growing up. It was a special occasion for us to do together. Of course you're going to be loyal to Crescent Ridge forever and make these trips, because the situation in which you consume something. When I was writing The Joy of Coffee, a book about coffee, the guy who bought Peet's Coffee and was one of the 3 founders of Starbucks said to me, I always stop people when they're about to say, you know what my best cup of coffee ever was, and say to them, were you on vacation? And so the idea that there's something special about the memory, that's your loyalty. I used to work every afternoon at Toscanini's and socialize with the people around the high table. It's always enormously important to me. Plus, I love their ice cream. Plus, I love the owner, Gus Rankatori. So I will always be most loyal to Toscanini's, Crescent Ridge, and there it was on the list where it should be.
That's another one of our favorites.
I want to just advance a little bit of what Sue said there. Generally, I love the list as much as anybody. One, because it's easy reading, and two, because it's a good reference if you want to go have ice cream or whatever it is. But they have. I was talking to an unnamed restaurateur. I told Sue before the show about 2 weeks ago, who almost always is a semifinalist for one of the James Beard Awards, and this person said to me that their business was suffering this season because it was the first round in recent years in which they were not a nominee. So being on can be a big plus, as you two were discussing. Not being on, either because you have a history or because you just didn't make it, is it could be a business crusher. And the reason I even mention this is because one of the good things the Globe did after the fact, after they did their best ofs last week, I just saw this last night actually, is they invited people to write in and say if there was a sandwich shop, for example, that didn't make it on the list that you think is a good one, let us know. While obviously it doesn't get the same profile as if you're on the best of list, it at least provides some opportunity for allegedly real people, and maybe the owners themselves, sending in a list. The point is I'm trying to make is these things have impact. And while we all love them, they really have, and I know how much you care about small, independent, food-related businesses, Corby. They really have an impact, and people have to consider that when they're writing them, compiling them, and that sort of thing. That's all I'll say. You're nodding in agreement.
He's agreeing with us.
He is agreeing with us.
I'm completely agreeing, because when I was a restaurant critic, my main power, I don't think, was particularly making or breaking a restaurant ever, depending on my review. It was simply including them or not including them. It was just a question of their getting attention that was most important.
Well, actually, I with all due respect, I disagree with you. If I have a restaurant, I eat out a lot. If you have a restaurant critic whose judgment I respect, even though we know everybody's tastes are different, who totally trashes a place, I won't go there. And maybe that's small-minded of me. People like you have a lot of influence, is what I'm bad. List makers, reviewers, critics, whatever they are, have a lot of influence. And I know you well enough to know you use that influence responsibly. But I'm just urging everybody to do the same thing. That's it. Goodbye. Nice to see you.
You're dismissed.
Corby Kummer.
Thank you for coming.
Corby Kummer. That's who he is. He wrote the first book on slow food.
Yeah,
you know that?
see, I did not know that.
That's
we
what
all
he said.
learned
I'm going to
something.
Google it to make sure it's true.
Yeah,
okay,
it's fine. All right.
See you later, Corby.
Corby, of course, is a multiple James Beard winner and executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. We're going to take a
By the way, Christina's was left off the best ice cream list in Inman Square. It's fabulous.
That's fabulous as well.
Thank you.
Okay, after a quick break, we're going to open up the phone and text lines, and we're going to talk to you about beach tents. They're everywhere.
They're gross.
They're annoying people at the beach. Are they annoying you? We're ending our Monday by opening the phone and text lines to talk with you about what drives you crazy at the shore. I'm NBC 10 Boston Sue O'Connell, in for Margery Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, and of course, we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When Hurricane Katrina hit 20 years ago, it broke a criminal justice system in New Orleans that was already dysfunctional before the storm.
The entire court system had collapsed. The files and all the evidence were under 4 feet of water.
But Katrina also cleared the way for change. I'm Ari Shapiro. A broken system and the people who worked to fix it. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com. And M&M Skylights, located in Stoneham, installing and servicing the full range of Velux skylights that can help bring air and more natural light into your home. Skylight consultations can be scheduled at mmskylights.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston sitting in for Margery, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow with the Civil Liberties Union's Carol Rose, CNN's John King, and the two owners whom we haven't met of the Sports Bra, which hopefully is going to be a bar that caters to women's sports only on their screens. And we didn't have time to talk with Shirley about it, but I think Trenny's with us tomorrow. We're going to talk about the WNBA team, maybe coming to Boston. So Margery's not here, so I get to wreak havoc on her staff, forcing them to produce and prepare another of our BPR summer perennial topics. Some might say a moldy chestnut, beach etiquette. Now, we were inspired today by Beth Teitel in the Globe. She writes about these grotesque, oversized beach tents and cabanas taking over the sands, much to the chagrin of normal people just trying to grab a little bit of sand to lie on for the day. Head to the beach, and you're sure to find what Teitel calls suburban sprawl. Colorful shade structures with brand names like Shabumi, is that how you say it?
I believe so.
I thought it was Chamois. And
That's a
Cool
different
Cabana, not to me. Gone are the days of a towel, a folding chair, maybe a rainbow umbrella. Enter the days of blocking the beach view with a 50 SPF rated tent that costs hundreds of dollars on top of the $30 you put out to park. In any case, the number's 877-301-8970 to call or text. How do you feel about these massive tents on your beaches? And more broadly, what other beach behaviors drive you out of your mind? Margery's favorite annoyance, you know, if you listen, is loud music and boom boxes from the beach. Mine, I'll get to yours in a second, is when you claim a piece of sand and someone puts their blanket down like 3 inches away from yours when there's plenty of room to space out. Maybe it's well, whatever. In any case, and by the way, we also want to add, speaking of beaches, what is your stance in 2025 on Speedos, otherwise known as banana hammocks? 877-301-8970. So before we get to the calls, let's hear from you. What's your major beach pet peeve? And 2, how do you feel about Speedos?
My major peeve is the music. Just because there are so many options now for you to have headphones and pods. There's really no need for me to hear your music. And if you want to have music for your crowd, you can all Bluetooth into it and all have your headphones on. That's the only thing that really bothers me the most. When I think about Speedos, pivoting, I recall the very first time I saw a man in a Speedo, and it was probably like 1965.
Wow.
And we were at the beach in Agunquit, my dad and my mom, and there was a dad in a Speedo with his kids and his wife, just frolicking in Agunquit. And I remember my dad saying, "Canadians," because the guy was Canadian, and you would not see an American in a Speedo, I don't think, at that time. But we miss the Canadians and wish they would come back to our New England resort area. So
how do you feel about Speedos?
I'm for it. I think if women can wear floss which is what it looks like, floss, bikini floss, men should be able to wear Speedos.
Okay, so before you get to the calls, anonymous texter Jim, is it true that the Speedo is also known as the beach dickie? The answer is yes, it is. And Jeannie from Somerville says, I just left Nahant. Listened to your show the whole time loudly, scared everyone away. Good for you, Jeannie.
Yes.
877-301-8970. I'm not done with this. Before we'll get to your calls. Yeah. Shaking your blanket or your towel in such a way that sand gets on me.
You're at the beach, Jim.
Unconscionable.
There's sand at the beach.
Okay, next. How about reserving a space like hours in advance, one of the prime spaces, then you disappear for hours expecting that plot of sand is going to be yours when you come back? I don't think so.
Well, I'm from Revere. I spent a lot of time at Revere Beach as a child.
Yes.
You know what you do is you just basically rob them when they do that.
You
and
take
then,
it?
Yeah, you take their stuff, and then they never leave it unaccompanied again. I mean, that's pretty much what we would do in Revere in the 60s.
And, you know, the other thing is, I'm sorry to go down this whole list here, but you have to secure your umbrella decently.
Yes, it's dangerous.
Now, I was not aware. I've always said it was dangerous, but it was in the abstract.
Dangerous.
You cited an example.
Yeah.
I assumed you were making it up this morning, but Nicole Googled it, and it was true. What happened exactly?
A 13-year-old was
impaled
and almost critically injured.
Almost.
At a Massachusetts beach, I think in 2019. And it happens throughout the world on a regular basis. On a windy day, if you don't put your umbrella in correctly or know to close it when it gets windy, it can, I mean, you see them. It happens all the time. They come at you, and you got to really, it's
I'm upset about just thinking about it, by the way. I just don't like it. You got to screw it in or whatever that word is. How do you get it? How do you get it, like, deep in the thing?
Well, you have to bring a shovel. I mean, my kid enjoys an umbrella, so of course I have to dig the hole, and then you've got the like a screw, and you screw it in, you put it in, and you keep it low, and then you have to be aware of the winds, Jim. It's like being out to the ocean when you're at the beach.
Now, there's a question I think you should probably answer.
Okay.
The bottom text. Could you respond to that, please?
Was the man in the Speedo and a gunkwit the reason Sue is a lesbian?
It is. You've told me that in the past.
It was indeed. Yes, I think it actually.
It's a choice you made
the
that
next
day,
time
I think.
Yeah, well, I think it was also gay culture, because then the next time I saw a man in a Speedo, it was Provincetown. I went, oh, my people, I have found them. You know, there's always that joke, too. Gay or Canadian? Sometimes tough to tell. Or lesbian or German.
A difference without a distinction or distinction without a... Okay, exactly. A couple more excellent texts, anonymous texts. This goes full circle to your original topic of the day. Stay at home and you won't be annoyed. Problem solved. People are awful. Natasha from Hull, Netasket Beach. I find beach tents pretentious, unfriendly, and against all the aesthetics and joy of being on an open beach. Real beach lovers use umbrellas. I totally agree with Natasha. The beauty and joy of beach is the open air, the conviviality. Well, I don't agree with that. And freeness, these are anything but. Yeah, this is like driving a Tesla Cybertruck to the beach. Would you not agree?
Yeah, it is. Although I used to be the type of person who would like to go to the beach for the full day. And since we're, talking about my being a lesbian, when you're at, especially if you're at like a Provincetown beach, the lesbians show up like they're going camping, right? We got the cooler, we got the hibachi.
We got your basic cooler.
We got the carabiners that we use in case we need to clip something down. We've got knives, we've got machetes, we're ready to go. So I understand if you've got a family and you want kids to be able to sleep at the beach, I get it. But the huge ones really start to annoy me. Now,
here's the other reason why you don't want someone laying their towel or their sheet right next to you. An anonymous texter listening on the vineyard says 2 couples set up directly in front of us, facing us, which is even worse, by the way, and discuss the guy's prostate procedure at length. New York accents to boot. Jesus, that is really...
You know what I love at the beach? Is when there's a circle of people who are related or together, and they're all talking about things that you can hear, which they normally wouldn't talk about out in public, sort of like this. But I like it when it's juicy and gossipy. And then when one of them leaves to go to the beach or to, go get something to eat, and then they talk about that person.
I could get into.
I love that.
Okay, now, you are not here often enough, even though you're here fairly often, to know anytime one of our coworkers says they have found sound of a particular thing, it's likely to be a disaster. So... we will take a chance. They say they have found the sound of the 13-year-old who was impaled on the, what do you call that? The umbrella thing. They say he is recounting his experience. I would say that's unlikely, but we'll give it a try. Here's the 13-year-old. Okay, we're going to try to play this every day in a row. This is the video of the young woman on the news who was crushing grapes in a bucket. I'm sure you've seen this. And she falls out of the bucket onto the ground, sort of on her head. and she's suffering. And obviously, my sadistic colleagues think
that's funny.
suffering is funny.
All right, so here's one that I do enjoy. Anonymous texter, not the people, but the seagulls. They are dangerous and mean. Now, one thing that I love to do is when a family leaves a couple of kids, there they are.
Okay, we know what a seagull
and the
sounds
kids
like.
are kind of new to the beach, and the
Yeah.
seagulls are surrounding them, and they start feeding them chips, right? And I generally say they're usually boys. Don't want to gender, but it's
fine,
boys. And I say, hey, buddy, you don't want to do that. And they just look at me. I go, okay. And then they are attacked by the seagulls, and I feel like I warned you. And then their parents come running, and it makes me feel good.
Well, and if you're in the next thing eating like a turkey sub, they come take the turkey sub afterwards.
Yeah.
One more text. I'm sorry, we really will get to the calls, but the texts are really spot on. 2 weeks, anonymous. 2 weeks ago, I was lucky to have a Friday off from work. I went to Crane Beach with a towel and a lightweight blanket and a book. I wore sunscreen, a bathing suit, and a hat. I had to move. This is another one on my list because of a woman smoking a move in capital letters if you're going to smoke.
Yeah, the smoking at the beach. I don't want smoking near me.
Isn't it illegal at most
I think
beaches?
it is, but then you have to go get it enforced, and and it's also it's terrible. Smoking is terrible at the beach.
Do you know what Jackie in Newport says that Speedos are called in Australia?
Budgie smugglers.
I like that. I like that. Kate in Situate, you've been very patient. You're first as we talk about beach peeves. Hi there, Katie.
My gosh, Jim, Sue, it's your favorite aggressive cleaner.
Oh, hey, how are you, Katie? Nice to talk to you.
I'm good. And Sue, you're fabulous today, and
Thank you.
guys are cracking me up. I had no idea that people were offended by people using. I have a cool cabana. It's aggressively large. It goes up so easily. You fill the corners with sand. No one's getting impaled. What should be banned are these torpedo-esque umbrellas that break every season. You can't get them in the ground, and then they just go flying and hurt somebody. So,
Katie, why do you need need a tent on the beach the size of like a 3-family house? Why?
Well, Jim.
Why, Katie?
I haven't gotten my tickets to come to the library yet. You're always sold out. But
We are, generally,
as
we
a
are.
As a red-haired, blue-eyed, freckled, retired lifeguard who does not need melanoma, everyone needs a cool cabana. And honestly, we should outlaw the Speedos and the umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a one with strong opinions. Katie, thank you very much for calling. Shibumi, is that how you say this
I have
name?
no idea. I didn't even know what the name of it was until today.
877,
Yes.
thank you for that. 877-301-89. I'm getting really, I do aggravate. Sometimes I don't go to the beach. This is the story of my life, by the way. Sometimes I don't do things that I want to do because I anticipate how
Being
aggravated I'm going
yeah.
to be by the behavior of others. And then I don't even have the experience.
So my family, we literally lived on the other side of the Blue Line train track, so we could walk a little overpass to the train tracks,
God.
and we'd be
Right
right
to
on
the
the beach, right on the beach, right on Revere Beach, and we would go with a chair, a towel, and a blanket. That was it.
That's what you're supposed to
And
do.
then one day I looked over at our neighbors who were there,
how'd they do?
across the street neighbors,
Yeah.
the Giacobis. I'll call them out. And Dolly Giacobi had brought grapes, cheese, peaches, sodas. And I looked at my mother and I said, why do they have food? And she gave me 35 cents and said, cross the street and go get a slice from Anna's Pizza and a Yoo-hoo. And that's how it was. So I think I have overcompensated because I felt unloved at the beach by my mother.
What, you mean you bring so much crap with you? What do you mean?
Now I actually pack like it's the apocalypse when we go to the beach.
Barb in Falmouth, you're next on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi, Barb.
And how are you?
We're very well, thank you.
We're good.
Good.
So I'm listening. I would say if you talk to people in Falmouth, they would say that they are split on the issue of dogs coming on the beach versus no dogs on the beach. But what really irks me the most is people that are abusive to our beach staff, our lifeguards, our parking attendants. And that's really tough. People have gotten, over the last few years, more quick to spiral, blow up if they don't happen to get into a parking spot on time. they think that they can come at 11 in the morning on a Saturday and still pull in and be assured they're going to get a parking spot. That's just not going to happen. And they get really angry. So that's hard when we're trying to maintain a full staff.
That's horrible.
Yeah,
that is really horrible. And also, aren't most of those staff people either really old people or kids, right?
Well, and a lot of the parking attendants, we have senior citizens and teens who are our parking attendants. And we've had one get hit in the face. Oh. We've had one take a car and park across the line of traffic and not let anyone else go forward. I mean, it's just ridiculous stuff. And, you know, in the scheme of things, these people need to get a life.
Yeah.
But that's
well said.
What's happening.
No, Barb, that is a very
thank
civilized perspective. Thank you.
Yes.
Now, Paul from Marshfield says, love me a good banana hammock at the beach, unless they're my therapist. And I'm guessing Paul is referring to yet another Curb Your Enthusiasm, a segment. Here, Larry spots his... we're going to get to it in a second. The sound thing is frozen. Oh, it's working now. Here, Larry spots his therapist at the beach wearing a budgie smuggler. Here it is.
I think I just saw my therapist. See the guy in the striped bathing suit? Skippy suit. See that?
I see him.
Yeah, that's my therapist.
Why don't you go say hi?
I can't talk to him in that bathing suit.
It is pretty small.
I can't walk around in a bathing suit like that.
I mean, he's at the beach. He can wear whatever he wants, right? Ooh. Did you see the back of his bathing suit? How does he walk around like that?
Well, because that therapist go by.
Exactly. I mean, it is hard. You want them they're represented in a particular way.
Yeah, you actually don't want to be on a nude beach either,
you
ever,
don't.
because as we
you
know,
ever encountered somebody on a nude beach who you knew otherwise?
Yes, and I've also, that old adage that the people who are usually nude at the beach are the people you don't ever want to see nude, and I'm scarred by all that.
Thank you for that.
So there you go.
Nancy in Arlington, you're next on BPR. We're talking about peeves at the beach. Hello there.
Hi. While I was waiting, I suddenly realized I do have several peeves.
Please.
But, thinking that I didn't, or saying that I didn't, but I really called to say that it reminded me of, I think it was a New Yorker cartoon a number of years ago that shows a middle-aged man, shall we say, with a very hefty paunch on the beach, and he's about to cross a sign. It's like a speeding limit sign, and it says, "Speedo limit 55."
That's pretty good, actually. That is.
So, Nancy, what are your peeves that you thought of while you were on hold?
Oh, well, like the things that people have mentioned, but also I am very petite. Like, I'm not even 5 feet tall, and I don't have a lot of extra meat on my bones.
Mm-hmm.
I get cold very easily. And so when people are like, "Oh, come on, the water's so warm," I'm like, no, you don't know. And then I get sort of, pressured into just try it. Just try. I try it, and instantly I'm sort of hypothermic. So I have to get out and put a towel around me and look like a little old.
I never go in the water.
Yeah. You don't?
No, I have very low blood pressure,
I don't
if,
think we really need to know that.
Well,
but
it's so you get this whole challenge. You have to get into water, and I'm like, I will go in from like North Carolina south. I'll go in the water. I'm not going in the water up here.
Okay, so you have low blood pressure. How's your cholesterol?
My cholesterol is pretty high, actually.
I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry. Nancy, thank you for that excellent call. Now, speaking of Revere Beach, about which you were just speaking, here's an anonymous texter. This is rather horrifying. I was on Revere Beach during the sandcastle competition weekend. By the way, I wanted to go since I moved here.
It's great.
I've never been.
I wasn't at this one, but
I'm
going
to go maybe next year. A competition weekend, not shown, or when the horses took a dump on the beach. I shouldn't have read this. And the police did not clean it up. I mean,
no one cleans up after horses
on the beach
anywhere, because it's just hay. Really? Have you ever seen anyone clean up after a horse?
Yes, I've seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
I've never seen anyone not clean up after a horse on the beach. When people are there for a sandcastle competition?
Well, I'll call the state police. I'm sure they don't have a lot going on.
Our number is 877-301-8970 is the number. An anonymous texter says, can't stand boom boxes, speakers of the beach. I don't want to hear your country hoedown, MAGA crap music while I'm trying to read. You want to read Dave from Jamestown, Rhode Island? Yeah.
Dave says, don't bash shibumis.
Shibumis.
They are more stable in windy conditions and take up no more room than the typical umbrella.
That is totally untrue. I'm sorry. A shibumi is generally the size of like a room. It's like a room on the beach.
Well, I think they come in different sizes. And,
let's look that up.
The people with the view, some folks are complaining they block the view of the water.
I am complaining.
But find a more desolate part of the beach if you're going somewhere. There's always some place you can sit if you want to just gaze at the water and take a look at it. We're certainly taking your texts and calls, 877-301-8970. What bugs you at the beach? What are your pet peeves? And I feel a little hypocritical that
About what?
About complaining about the boom boxes when I know that when I was a teenager and young adult and would go to Revere Beach, I know we would just leave our car radios on, I think, because ironically we sat on the sidewalk side. Not on the water side, so we're basically sitting on the street near the water with our car radios going, look, there, well,
those are no, this is BS.
We're looking at pictures
I'm
of
on the
shibumis.
Shibumi website,
okay,
which I assume most listeners have spent time on. The classic shibumi. Do you know how much a classic shibumi costs?
Which one? How big is it?
$288. Oh, how big is it? This is my point.
Okay.
You know how many people it covers? Getting back to the person who said it's just the size of an umbrella? 4 to 8 people.
Right, but would
one
you not,
umbrella
would you not
covers
have
up
4
4
to 8
people.
umbrellas? You might have 4 to 8 umbrellas.
That's not what the person said. They didn't say 4 to 8 umbrellas. They said an umbrella. Right. So a classic shibumi. And I would say if you're going to buy a shibumi, you're not going for the mini. Is that correct? You're going for the classic shibumi,
Well,
correct?
it depends. I don't want to, if it's just 2 or 3 of us.
Well, you could buy the mini. The mini is 2 to 4 people, but that's $208. And if you're going to spend $208, you get the classic shibumi, which is only $80 more, and you can cover everybody in Revere at the Shibumi Fest, at the thing there.
These are very exciting times.
Let's go to one of these. Where do you want us to go to these people here?
Anybody ready?
You ever
to
hear
talk to
Shibumi
us?
before today?
No, this is the first time I've heard. I didn't know it had a brand name, so I'm just very excited about that.
Can I be honest here?
Yeah.
And I try to. It actually looks. I don't like the concept, but I like the concept. Meaning, it looks. I wouldn't do it because I think it's really disrespectful to non-Shibumi users at the beach. But this is really Rachel. You're on Storrow or you're somewhere. Hi, Rachel. Hello there. Hi.
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 I'm in Truro.
Truro.
We know where
Same
that
as
is.
Storrow.
We know
That's
where
close
Truro
enough.
is, yes.
I'll be there soon, so wait for me, Rachel. Go ahead.
Truro, which is famous because it's right next to B-Town. But basically, so I don't mind dogs at the beach. In fact, I'm guilty of bringing my dog all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really mind are people who bring their dogs and pick up after them and then leave the plastic bag lying somewhere because they can't be bothered to carry it around, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I am so with you, Rachel. Rachel, let me ask you something. Have you ever owned a Shibumi?
Yeah, well, no, I have a different brand. I have something called an authentic, and I have to say I'm in the camp of people who like these bigger sun protective structures. I advise people to use sunscreen and sun protective structures all day. It's part of my job. So anyway,
Wait a second. What's your job? What's your job?
I'm a dermatologist, so I don't want to see more skin cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Generally, my rule of thumb is whenever I see an Ozempic, I say if you have a little doggy bag, just put it right under the Ozempic so that it won't. So, Rachel, that was a great call. Thank you very much. David from Vermont.
Oh, he agrees with you
now
on
I'm
this,
embarrassed.
Jim.
No, but he means it even deeper. My pet peeve, my beach peeve, sand. I don't like sand. I didn't mean sand being kicked on you. I don't like sand.
You don't like sand.
I like a beach. I know this sounds sort of oxymoronic.
But you don't like.
But you know what I mean? I don't like sand as such.
Right.
I like
it's part
a
of going
beach.
to the beach, though.
I know it.
Unless you go to a pond where the sand is different. We have this anonymous texter.
Please.
I was at Gayhead at Martha's Vineyard, didn't realize there was a nude section until this very large man came walking over to me and asked me if he could give me a massage.
No.
I was reading a book with my earbuds in, and I'm not quite sure what part of that said I was there for a massage from a naked man. And then he tried to buy pierogies.
I hope
No,
that's true.
someone
That
else,
is
sorry.
really great. We're trying, by the way, if anybody knows who it is, we are trying really hard to get the pierogi salesperson who Alan Dershowitz was unable to buy pierogies from because he didn't like his politics.
Because he wasn't in the news cycle.
If you know the pierogi pop-up human. Lynn, you're in New Bedford as we wait for Jared, who's coming around the bend. Lynn, quickly, what's your deal?
Hi. So I go to Onset Beach a lot.
Yep. I've been there.
What I find kind of disconcerting is when there are kids throwing baseballs or footballs kind of like right by your towel.
So glad you asked.
Because I was hit in the head with a football last summer. And so there's that.
Well, that was a perfect addition because we left that out.
Yeah, kids. Kids should
go
not be
into
at the beach.
street and throw balls. And other than sand and the kids and cigarettes and obumis
And
or
horse
whatever it's called,
poo.
ShamWows. Or,
Sham-
what's your primary pet peeve?
Hello, Jared.
So I had it yesterday, but then I thought, what am I doing? This is what we wait all winter for. So I was at a lake yesterday, and there were screaming children in their big inflatable peacocks and unicorns and all of that. It's just screaming nonstop. And I was just getting super annoyed. Then I thought, yeah, but this is what you dream of in the middle of January is to hear these sounds.
Right.
Usually a shark takes care of it, but
And we're,
not in a lake.
And we're trying to be we're trying to encourage people to have more children, aren't we? Yes, except don't bring them to the beach.
If you want more transportation funding, you have to have children. Hey, I told Sue this before. I went to a movie by myself on Saturday, which I haven't done in ages, Naked Gun. And,
I'm dying to see that.
Well, I make fun of you all the time for that disease, misanthropy or whatever your disease
Misophonia.
is. Misophonia. I was so aggravated by people eating, the sound of people eating popcorn. I'm not kidding. Popcorn that I almost screamed. So
Did I get in your head?
It may be contagious. I may have. What's called
misophonia?
Horrible.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome. What are you doing on the...
Wait, how was the movie? I'm dying to see it.
Don't ask him.
I mean, I want to say this, which maybe sounds... I did laugh out loud, which is rare. Out loud like 5 or 6 times. But if you take out those 5 or 6 times, which is like a minute, it's just not.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to. It's not. But go see it anyway. Well, I don't know why you should go see it, but it was not. Whatever. Okay, what are you doing? Quickly.
So, Mari Parrish Jeffries from Embrace Boston is on. He's going to be talking about a new statue of W.E.B. Du Bois that was unveiled in Great Barrington. Also, we'll talk about the MLK files that were just released. Kate Dellis takes us to Chan's home of egg rolls, jazz, and blues in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, a legendary venue. And Elijah Wald, who wrote the book about Dylan that became a complete unknown. He's going to be on the show and perform today.
Excellent.
Great. That's fine.
Stay with us, Jared Bowen in the Culture Show.
I'm supposed to close the show.
Okay, so stay with us 24/7 with the podcast. Check out our TikTok page.
You just do it.
At Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, I won't be here, but Andrea Cabral will be here with Jim live at the Boston
You're
Public.
back Wednesday, right?
Right.
Okay,
Library. You don't need tickets, don't need reservations. CNN's John King will be there. ACLU Massachusetts Carol Rose. NBC Sports Boston Trenny Casey. The new owners of the Sports Bra Boston, the restaurant that's going to be focused on women's sports. Thanks to our crew today, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, with additional support from Nia Harmon. Patrick Lally ran the YouTube stream today. The engineer is John the Claw Parker, and the executive producer is Jamie Bologna. As I said, Culture Show is up next. He is
Jim Browdy.
I am Sue O'Connell.
You were great, Sue. Thanks.
Thanks. I'll see you on Wednesday. Everybody be back here on Tuesday. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. As World War II rages on, criminals try to take advantage of the chaos, but with Detective Foyle on the case, they aren't having much luck. Don't miss Foyle's War tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at